Apocalyptic Black Technology System. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 15 The Impaler. Zhu Feng was leading the team through the alleys of the new capital. He is the captain of the third team of the first army formation of the fleet. His team is fully staffed with 15 members. He is the first batch of non-fleet military combatants recruited by Su Ren after the Sky Brood War. He is also a member of the reserve fleet. Combatants and reserve pilots. Zhu Feng is not a local. He's from Liao province. After the Sky Brood Annihilation War, he heard of the existence of the Xinjiang Special Zone. He was the first group of people to enter the Xinjiang Special Zone. Afterwards, he caught up with Su Ren, who was in the large-scale recruitment at that time. Destroyers were flying in the sky, and not many people could refuse such a job, especially for an ordinary person like Zhu Feng. A few months ago, before the apocalypse broke out, he was just a young physical education teacher, unable to squeeze into a school in a big city, so he could only choose dutifully employment in townships and counties, and it saved his life when the end of the world broke out. Important human cities were the first to suffer, while marginalized towns and counties became safe places after a bumpy road. Zhu Feng never thought that he would become a member of a non-military armed force and a black technology fleet. After his identity was verified and his background checked, he entered the list of the first batch of trainers because of his excellent physique as a physical education teacher. On the one hand, he received physical training in reality, and on the other hand, he underwent unprecedented full immersion training. Except military knowledge in the cabin in a very short time, Zhu Feng stood out and became a small team leader. And now he can even lead the team to perform tasks independently. Such a turning point in life was something that Zhu Feng had never thought about before. Therefore, he has a sense of belonging and honor to the fleet and His Excellency the Commander. Although many people say that the commander of the fleet and Mr. Su Ren are not human, but Zhu Feng didn't think so. They wiped out the Sky Brood, delineated the Xinjiang Special Zone, and recruited so many humans. So what if they are not humans? Without the fleet of Your Excellency Commander rushing forward, who can stand here and say these sarcastic remarks? However, the Xinjiang Special Zone is not peaceful, especially the densely populated Xinjiang city. Although Your Excellency the Commander and the Swarm have demarcated the Xinjiang Special Zone where they will not attack each other, the Swarm will still release some small bugs into the Xinjiang Special Zone to do some spying and assassination tricks, so check these things out. It is also one of the tasks carried out for the public in the new capital after the Sky Brood Annihilation battle. The first small bug was discovered in the new capital, and this investigation began. It was first carried out by the military. But with the passage of time, the entire inventory process has become more and more standardized and the equipment has become more and more advanced. At this time, Zhu Feng's team brought a biological search device, which was a mechanical device integrated with a backpack platform, which required a person to operate it, and could identify small living creatures within a radius of 1 kilometer. The device, as long as it confirms the active creature shown above, is enough. They are in charge of the 7th district of the new capital. This is a new urban area created by the influx of a large number of survivors and the expansion of the new capital. Zhu Feng has always been in charge of this area, and this time is no exception. Many survivors already know about it and are actively cooperating. Although most of the targets were ordinary small animals, there were indeed some discoveries along the way. Under a dilapidated tree, they found a slap-sized worm, which looked like a longhorn but had sharp poisonous needles. In the military database, this small Zerg was called puncture needle, which moves extremely fast, and the poisonous needle carries deadly poison, which is injected into the human body, and a strong adult male will die of systemic organ failure within 10 seconds. This kind of small bug is no easier to deal with than a large battle bug. At the moment of confirmation, Zhu Feng immediately dispersed his subordinates, surrounded the dead uncle, and opened fire to annihilate and strangle him. After confirming the kill, they continued to act. Zhu Feng must complete the inventory of the current area within the specified time, otherwise it will delay the entire inspection process of the new capital. One of his team members asked, "Captain, tell me, this worm said it would not invade the Xinjiang Special Zone. Why did it send these little things to our territory? Commander, why didn't you use this reason to act? This can be regarded as tacit agreement with the Swarm." Zhu Feng actually didn't quite understand, so he said with his own understanding, "I think, Your Excellency, Commander, is to protect the survivors of the new capital. You see, although we and the Swarm briefly reached a settlement, But haven't we been recruiting survivors from the surrounding areas outside the Xinjiang special zone? The swarm didn't take advantage of this to attack. In fact, this is because neither side wants to fire rashly. Suran was making preparations, and the swarm was also making preparations. They were unwilling to fight until they were sure that they could swallow each other in one bite. That would be of no benefit to either party. The team member was convinced by Zhu Feng's appearance, and nodded repeatedly after hearing the words, "So that's the case, Your Excellency, Commander, is for everyone." Zhu Feng smiled, and was about to say something, but at this moment, he saw a few people coming up from the corner, so he straightened his expression and said, "You are, among these people." The leader was a white-haired old man, who was actually a Caucasian man, who spoke fairly fluent Chinese, and said, "Are you combatants of the fleet?" "Well, we are the 3rd Squadron of the fleet's 1st Army formation. I am Captain Zhu Feng. You are?" "I am a believer in the 7th District of the Holy Order. How, I can hardly be considered a high priest, but in fact I am just a missionary." The old man smiled slightly and said, "You can call me William. I come from America, but settled in China in the early years. Holy Inquisition." Zhu Feng has also heard of this church, which has a profound influence on a global scale. It belongs to a new church that has emerged after the end of the world, and there are many believers in the new capital. It's just, what is he looking for? "Do you have anything to do?" "On behalf of the Xinjiang Holy Inquisition, I want to send a message to your commander." William smiled kindly. Zhu Feng pondered for a moment, and said, "What do you want to say? Why don't you go by yourself? Although the commander is very busy, if you follow the procedures, he may not see you." "No. Commander, you don't trust us. Besides, the Xinjiang Holy Tribunal doesn't want to get involved in this kind of thing." William laughed. "Captain Zhu, please pass a message for me. The United States hopes to form an alliance with your side." Chapter 16 Suran and number 039, S Determination. Chapter 16 Suran's Determination. Suran was slightly surprised by the news Zhu Feng brought. He has already proposed a global alliance invitation with the military and even the top officials, but why doesn't Lao Mei communicate with himself through conventional military channels, instead relying on a godfather of the Holy Inquisition in the Xinjiang Special Zone to spread the word? He just said he wanted to form an alliance with me, and didn't he say anything else? Zhu Feng nodded. "That's right. Mr. William only said that he is an ordinary believer who just spread the word, so, yet, catch him." Suran replied calmly. This sentence surprised Zhu Feng. "This, isn't that good?" The captain thought about the calmness and composure shown by the old American before, as well as the admirable temperament, and felt that it was not good to arrest him like this. On the other hand, Suran raised his eyes sideways, and gave Zhu Feng a slanted look. Noticing this gaze, Zhu Feng immediately became agitated, saluted and said loudly, "Obey. Your Excellency, Commander." After saying this, Zhu Feng turned around murderously, and went to deal with this matter. Suran rubbed her chin. "Those who only pass on rumors but don't see anyone, this is Lao Tzu's territory. Since you have come out, don't even think about it." On the other hand, Suran called Chen Han, and the first sentence was, "I want to go." Chen Han was slightly stunned, and he barely understood Suran's meaning for a moment. "Ah. Your Excellency Commander, do you want to go? Where are you going? Are you going to the new capital?" "No." Suran stood up and said, "I'm going to the Korean peninsula. You convey this matter to Yuan Licheng on my behalf. I haven't been able to find my adjutant since an hour ago." This time Chen Han was really taken aback. "Your Excellency, Commander, are you going to go on an expedition to the Koryo Peninsula? Is our fleet going to set off?" "Let's go. I'll go by myself." Suran said, "The Koreans do have a lot of resources, and those resources are almost at the border. But they don't have the ability to transport them, and according to what Minister Park just learned, this batch of resources has been targeted by the swarm, and will soon fall into the hands of the swarm. I can't watch the ducks I got fly away. If these resources do not reach my hands, it will cause great trouble for my next deployment. I have to go there, but this matter must be kept strictly confidential, and no one must know that I have left Xinjiang." Chen Han was still a little dazed, and couldn't come to his senses for a long time. "This is not right, Commander. Please think twice. If you leave the Xinjiang Special Zone, something will happen to you. That's why I want you to keep it strictly confidential." Suran took a deep breath. Of course he knew that he stayed here not only to suppress the spore life, but also to suppress the swarm and the military, but he really couldn't wait. Now, the time limit agreed with the swarm is getting closer and closer, and Suran doesn't really want to take people into space to escape to the universe, and the swarm's movements are becoming more and more frequent, but Su Ran not only wanted to collect resources, but also build ships. These all take time. He had to speed up and get a resource point from the Koryo line. This matter cannot be delayed. In fact, just before Zhu Feng's arrival, Minister Park Sun-hoon from Korea had already come here once, and his meaning was very clear, that is, he was willing to accept Su Ran's conditions, but similarly, Korean people also had their own difficulties. They have limited manpower and troops, and it is already very difficult to ensure that personnel arrive at the Xinjiang Special Zone, let alone transport a large amount of resources into the Xinjiang Special Zone. Therefore, Su Ran planned to make a trip by himself, directly collect a large amount of ready-made resources in Koryo, and then combine the resources he is currently mining in the Xinjiang Special Zone. At the end of this month at the latest, he believes that his resource points can approaching 200,000 points. If there are 200,000 resource points, not only the top battleships under the 4th level manufacturing list can be built, but other gunboats and frigates can also be put on the manufacturing schedule as soon as possible. With such benefits, the risk is nothing. Su Ran didn't have this idea before, but just now Park Shang-sum gave another heavyweight weight, and the resources handed over to Su Ran were fully doubled compared to what was agreed before, which made Su Ran make up his mind to take a trip in person on the Koryo Peninsula, go to the recycling resource point to save the difficulty and loss of cross-border transportation. Although Chen Han tried to persuade him a few more words, they were all rejected by Su Ran. Chen Han didn't dare to say anything, so he had to leave temporarily and report back to Yuan Licheng. After Chen Han left, Su Ran immediately called Zhang Jianguo, Li Yilan, and Hu, informed them of his going out, handed over half of the fleet command, and said, after I left, at this stage, Yuan Licheng will temporarily take the lead and speak on my behalf. Of course, if there is a problem with Lao Yuan's policy, you can also veto it on behalf of the fleet. This time the distance is too far. I am going to take the battleship out, so communication is difficult to guarantee, but I will return as soon as possible. Hearing Su Ran's words, Li Yilan and the others were shocked. They did not expect that the commander of the entire fleet, who is currently in the Xinjiang Special Zone, would actually go out in person. They almost made the same decision as Chen Han, and they were all persuading Su Ran. They didn't want Su Ran, the supreme commander, to risk his life and enter the Korean peninsula. Who even said, as far as I know, the Koryo Peninsula is full of wars, and they are close to the sea. A large number of marine alien species landed along the coast, and even many broods that attack the Koryo Peninsula are under the ocean, which is too dangerous. Su Ran shook her head. Compared to the benefits, this danger is nothing. Moreover, I will take away a group of marines and related armed forces, so you don't have to worry. Li Yilan, Zhang Jianguo and the others looked at each other. Their expressions were filled with worry. They have been following Su Ran for a long time. Although Su Ran has never admitted anything, they probably know what Su Ran is doing with these resource points, so they can understand Su Ran's trip. However, Li Yilan couldn't help but said, without mechanized troops and fleets, this business may be very dangerous. Su Ran, you have to be careful. Don't worry. I'm more afraid of death than anyone else. If I really feel that the risk is too great, I won't have any plans for this trip. Su Ran smiled and said, the Xinjiang Special Zone will be handed over to you. The military, the insect swarm, the spore life, and your own people, please be careful. I don't want the first thing I do when I return to the new capital is to kill people. Li Yilan and the others looked at each other, and they all obeyed and left Su Ran's office, but the expressions on their faces seemed a little worried. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 17: Crossing the Border. The off-road is bumping violently, and the post-apocalyptic northeast plain looks extremely barren. A convoy of black off-road vehicles is running on this land. Su Ran was sitting on one of the ordinary-looking off-road vehicles, but in fact, this is a system-produced R-07 Runner military off-road vehicle with a full bulletproof structure. There are two concealed muzzles under the lights on both sides of the front of the vehicle, and it is loaded with two 12.7mm guns. Machine Gun Runner is a relatively low-level off-road combat model in the system. It can be manufactured when the system is upgraded to level 2 and the manufacturing list is expanded, and the cost is only 35 resource points. But because in the large-scale battle against the swarm, Its performance and firepower did not have the upper hand against the Black Beetle. Once it was pulled into the battlefield, it was almost like cannon fodder. Therefore, it was hardly produced by Suran. However, it came in handy today. 2 convoys consisting of 12 runners will enter the Korai Peninsula area from 2 directions and play a role as important vehicles. There are 2 convoys, one is the Fleet Awakener squad from Xinjiang Special Zone, and the other is Zhu Feng's tactical squad. Moreover, in these 2 convoys, everyone is equipped with a dark energy armor. Although no warship set sail, this is definitely the most powerful ground combat force in Suran's fleet. Suran was well prepared for her trip to the Korai Peninsula. This time the representative of Korea, Minister Park Sun-hoon, did not personally accompany him. He was actually quite afraid of death. This time, he rushed to the Xinjiang Special Zone. In a sense, it was not only to help his country open up passages here, but also to make a living for yourself. Once he's here, he doesn't intend to leave. Suran even learned that there was even Park Sun-hoon's son among the Korean envoys. Obviously, this is planning to drag his family to stay in the new capital, and Minister Park obviously did not expect that such a message would make a big man like Suran set off for the Korai Peninsula in person. He was terrified because of this, afraid that Suran would send him back with him by name. He quickly kicked out a group of unwelcome members of his mission from his mission team and accompanied Suran back to the Korean peninsula. The current person in charge is a woman named Jin Se-young, who is surprisingly only 26 years old, has a beautiful Korean face, and has a casual temperament. Always gives people a feeling of unreliability, considering that these are people that Minister Park doesn't like. Suran can understand this anyway. He doesn't need these Koreans to do anything, he just needs to lead the way. Leading the way is never wrong, right? But out of politeness and caution, Suran still arranged the Jin Se-young representative in his car, which was also a kind of supervision. Looking at the scenery passing by outside, the gold representative sighed. "Oh, I've been here for less than a week, and I'm going back." Suran glanced at her. Sure enough, this person didn't really want to return to her hometown, but also wanted to stay in the safe Xinjiang Special Zone, and she was just forced to do nothing at the moment. "We'll be back soon," Suran replied nonchalantly. "Your Excellency, Commander." Jin Se-young turned her head in Zunshen, glanced at Suran, and said, "Actually, I'm a little curious. You're going to our Korai Peninsula to get resources in person this time, right? But, still, it seems to me that you don't have any vehicles that can be used for transportation at all. I only have a plan for this. You don't have to worry about it." Suran responded lightly, but what she was thinking was, I don't know when the system will have a facility that allows others to recycle resources, so that I don't have to be like this way. You can save a lot of money by taking risks. However, Suran was just thinking about this idea, and he knew that it was unrealistic in a short time. The resource recycling of watches involves an independent space closely connected with a system. It can be said that it is the core technology for the operation of the entire system. The manufacturing possibilities shown by the current 4-level system cannot match it. It is even less likely that there will be any independent recycling equipment that can be used by others unless Suran handed over his watch directly. Not to mention whether Suran will do this, even if he thinks it is impossible, because the watch and he are already in a fit state. Unless he cuts off his hand, Suran hasn't found anything to take off the watch method. Suran's thoughts were spinning, and Jin Se-young on the other side was already quite curious and said in not so fluent Chinese, "Commander, are you planning to use our local vehicles for transportation? Or yours? The battleship group is actually in the sky? Are they following us in a completely invisible state? In order to avoid the surveillance of the swarm? Wow, brilliant. That's right, Commander. Are the weapons and equipment you promised to our country all the same? On your battleship? No wonder our King Xianquan didn't bring anything. It's all a trick." Suran said, "No, my fleet is still in Xinjiang Special Zone, and the swarms are watching my fleet all the time, so I can't move my fleet." Suran still explained something politely, but then he found out that the gold representative didn't listen at all, and was just wringing his fingers and imagining Suran's fleet displaying military power on the Korai Peninsula. The group retreated. Seeing this scene, Suran couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He knew why the gold representative was not welcomed with the selfishness and accident shown by that Minister Park. "Of course I don't like this kind of silly girl who talks to herself." Suran didn't speak anymore, and silently watched the scenery fly by. Outside a window there are no obstacles on the way from the Xinjiang Special Zone to the Korai Peninsula. Because of the special nature of the Korai Peninsula, the swarms are still fighting. If the swarms can deploy force at the border between the Huaxia Kingdom and Korai, the country has basically been completely destroyed. Therefore, it is still very simple to pass from here. If there are books, it will be long, and if there are no books, it will be short. This process went very smoothly. When approaching the border, Su Ran's two convoys were divided into four, and they crossed the border as unnoticed as possible. The end of the world broke out, and the garrisons on the border here have already gone to other places, and the swarms did not kill here, but it was extremely desolate after crossing the border and completely entering the Koryo Peninsula area. Su Ran's convoy rejoined, gradually slowed down, and became cautious. Chapter 18. Chapter 18. Su Ran and the others passed the Wangswa Natural Scenic Area, crossed a deserted wilderness, and entered the Korean peninsula from the side of Changbei Mountain. Here, an officer led his troops to wait. In fact, there were two platoons of troops to greet Su Ran, and two officers from the north and the south also came. But now the two sides have entered an unprecedented stage of wartime cooperation, and there is really no other place in Su Ran's car. After deliberation, since the representative Jin in Su Ran's car is already from the South Korean side, the local North Korean military officer got into Su Ran's car. It was a North Korea soldier who was not so tall. He didn't have much cash in his equipment, and his physique was not very burly, but he was very enthusiastic. When he got in the car, he shook hands with Su Ran enthusiastically. "You are Comrade Su Ran, right? It is Kui Chenggao, and I will bring you to Jian next." His Chinese is not bad. Su Ran also shook hands with the other party politely. "Hello. Thank you for the support provided by the Koryo Peninsula during this operation. This is as it should be. Half of the 30,000 people we are going to send to your Xinjiang Special Zone are also civilians and leaders of our North Korea." Kui Chenggao said, "And it is true, Platoon Commander Min and I are both from the Hitazen Theater. The situation in the Hitazen Theater is very bad. We really can't draw other troops." "Oh, yes, Platoon Leader Min is the officer from South Korea. His full name is Min Dong-won, and although he is not very well-mannered, he is also a qualified fighter." The Hushan War Zone is the city on the Koryo Peninsula that is closest to the Huaxia Kingdom and Su Ran's Xinjiang Special Zone. As far as Su Ran knows, there was only a war insect nest here a month ago, but in this one during the month, from East Koryo Bay and Huate Line, a large number of insect swarms landed from the sea, penetrated all the way, and broke through to the Hushan area. Their purpose is very clear, that is to break through the defense line in this area, and erect a bronze wall and iron wall for Su Ran here. From then on, they can form an encirclement trend, including Su Ran's entire Xinjiang Special Zone. Realize all-round blockade, but the swarm apparently failed to do so. As early as 2 months ago, the north and south of the Koryo Peninsula completed the latest cooperation agreement. The two peninsula countries that have been divided for a long time were united extremely rarely in this unprecedented disaster, and broke out unprecedented fighting power, especially it is the North Korea region. Although it is a bit special for some indescribable reasons, this speciality has shown unprecedented combat effectiveness at this moment. Fearless and a dead end is probably the attitude of the soldiers here. Therefore, although the attack of the insect swarm was fierce, after 2 months, although they penetrated through the flower terrace and reached the Hitazen area, they were held back by the army of the Koryo Peninsula, preventing the swarm from moving forward further. "I understand." Su Ran nodded and said, "Thank you for your efforts for the Xinjiang Special Zone. No. This is also for ourselves." Kui Chenggao said, "Our leader and comrade said that we are not fighting our own battle, but the battle for the future of the whole of Asia and the whole world." Su Ran felt a little ashamed when he said this. Then, Kui Chenggao continued to speak. A little cautiously said, "Now our supplies are trapped in Jian, that is one of our cities. The swarm has discovered our intention to transport supplies to the Xinjiang Special Zone, and is launching crazy attack. We originally prepared tens of millions of tons of various ores for you, but many of them were attacked and swept away by the swarm before they set off. In addition to the transportation loss and battle loss during the convergence process, now in Jian the region may only have 1 million tons or even lower than this figure. But this is our limit, I can understand." Su Ran said, "Don't worry, this amount has far exceeded my tone. I can also understand that I want resources. Insect swarms also need resources, and humans also need resources. It is impossible to have all the resources. They all come together here, right? Especially after the swarm realizes that I need resources more, it is even more difficult for me to obtain resources from surrounding areas. The location has basically been blocked, except for a few survivors who can escape. It is almost impossible for resources to pass through the blockade of the swarm." Kui Chenggao nodded again and again. "Okay. Then let's go to Giant as soon as possible. With that said, he got out of Su Ran's car, returned to his own military car, and commanded his troops. But at this time, their convoy has already started to move again, traveling through the wilderness of North Korea, bypassing the Hidazan area and all the fighting areas, and advancing towards Giant. North Korea is relatively poor. When the apocalypse broke out, the sense of desolation became even worse. Even if you were walking in the wilderness, you could still feel the generation gap between this country and China and the narrowness of the region. The total area of the Korean peninsula is only 220,000 square kilometers, while in China, the original Xinjiang province, which was classified as the Xinjiang Special Zone, has an area of 180,000 square kilometers. And because of this, at the moment when the swarms of insects are rampant, there is almost no possibility of not being discovered when walking on this land. After driving a third of the distance, the Black Beetle squad that had been patrolling in the wilderness discovered them and howled from the end of the wilderness to kill them. Su Ran didn't fire, but Kui Chengyu and Min Donggyun organized a team to fire while blocking the Black Beetle. He continued to move towards Giant. This is not the new capital city. The entire North Korea war zone is full of wars and bugs. Once they are discovered, it means endless pursuit. Swarms of black beetles gather from all directions, and there may be only 4 small groups. There are 5 of them, and the larger ones may have more than 20 black beetle war insects, which is not something Kui Chengyu and the others can fight against with the equipment they carry. Although Su Ran carried many air weapons, he had no intention of making a move. He has just crossed the border, and if he uses these equipment here, he will definitely be discovered by the swarm, and he will definitely become the target immediately. At that time, it will not be as simple as whether he can reach Giant smoothly. And at this moment, without knowing what decision Platoon Leader Min and Platoon Leader Kui made in front, the convoy suddenly turned around at this moment and jumped into a hilly area. Su Ran didn't know why, but saw a semi-armed and militarized village in this hill. He instantly understood what Platoon Leader Kui's decision was: abandon the cart to protect the handsome man, and hand over more and more black beetles behind him to the combat unit here. Chapter 19 Sword Virtue. There are many garrisons and militiamen in the village of the hill, and it seems that they have received the news that Su Ran and the others are coming early, so they opened up all layers of defense to allow them to pass through unimpeded. The convoy didn't stop. Su Ran looked out through the off-road car window. This village has been semi-militarized and has a lot of ordnance and equipment, but the soldiers in it are a mixture of soldiers and militias, and the modernization of the village is very bad. The style is probably similar to that of China in the 1960s and 1970s. There is also that kind of loudspeaker, shouting something that Su Ran can't understand in Korean, as if announcing some announcement on both sides of the street. There are many busy militiamen, women, and even sallow-faced and thin children standing in the corner, watching the convoy whizzing by, passing through their village like a passerby, without stopping at all, and entering from the entrance of the village, passed through from the other side, and then completely left the hilly area through another exit. Su Ran's eyes were heavy. He knew that the village would be razed to the ground by the black beetles when they passed by. Such a hilly area blocked the pursuit of the swarm, but also blocked the people, and the soldiers stepped back, and once they started exchanging fire with the swarm, they were already destined to die. The swarms will come in batches until they completely engulf everyone in this small village, and they are just to open a path for themselves. To get rid of the pursuit of the black beetle swarm, the village behind gradually became smaller. At this moment, Su Ran heard a change in the voice of the radio. Su Ran instinctively looked at Representative Jin beside him. Jin Ziyang was surprisingly silent at this moment, and it took a long time to realize that the commander was looking at him. She took a deep breath and said, "That means, North Korea welcomes you, Commander." These words made Su Ran fall into silence, and at this moment, there was a loud noise from behind. The sound of gunshots, cannons, howls, and the desperate screams of human beings merged into a symphony of the end of the world, and the welcoming sound just now still echoed in the hills. For a long time the convoy fell silent for an unprecedented time. This was not the first day of the last days. Everyone knew what kind of fate the village was about to face. Su Ran almost couldn't help but wanted to make a move. A message was sent out to let the fleet of the Xinjiang Special Zone set sail, or simply release a destroyer that he had not launched yet, but he can't do it. It's instant. The war will not end quickly because he helped these people today, but the result is that the entire Xinjiang Special Zone will fall into a full-scale war situation. More people will die, and Su Ran's counterattack plan will therefore be indefinitely was delayed. He was silent for a long time and said, "I'm sorry, there is nothing to be sorry about." Jin Ziyang said, "Your Excellency, without your Xinjiang Special Zone, We don't even have a place to evacuate the people. You gave us a chance, so that we don't have to be like the people of Dongying, waiting for the countdown to extinction in the land of the country. It was the first time for the gold representative to be so serious, but the seriousness didn't last long, and she quickly laughed. And you brought hope. Didn't you really come with weapons and equipment? Sky stealth battleship or something? Su Ran's eyes twitched, and said, probably. Jin Ziyang's eyes widened, but she looked a little cute instead. What do you mean? My Chinese is not good, Commander. What do you mean? Where did you learn the accent? Su Ran looked at the Jin representative helplessly. Both the small village and the Black Beetles were left behind, but this is not the end. The number and scale of the insect swarms on this land far exceeded Su Ran's imagination, and also exceeded the data he obtained from several long-distance observations before. In addition to the Black Beetle, there are even some war insects with obvious marine characteristics appearing and disappearing. In order to attract a group of war insects, Platoon Leader Min took the initiative to leave the team and lured a group of roaring war insects away during the period. Su Ran also saw a walker. It was a giant creature. Theoretically it should be a war worm in the ocean, but it was moved to the earth. It was extremely huge, with a height of 100 meters, and it walked on the earth with heavy feet. The land dead in the middle of the world, only heavy weapons can do it. It is the god of death for small-scale guerrilla villages and troops. However, because of its huge size and cumbersome size, it often cannot keep up with the large-scale advancing insect swarms. It can only wander around alone and exists as a sweeping force, and there are few small combat insects that cooperate with it. Therefore, although Su Ran and the others drove by not far from it, but this huge guy didn't notice them at all, so it was safe and sound. In fact, the distance from Hushan area to Giant is not far, but because of the existence of these various war insects, their footsteps were greatly slowed down, and they approached the Giant area until the sky gradually darkened on the outskirts of the Giant area. Their convoy slowly stopped because it is no longer possible to move forward here after the convoy was well concealed. Su Ran stood on a commanding height and looked around after 2 courses of the primary dark energy stimulating drug unit, although Su Ran unfortunately failed to become the kind of Superman who can fly by jumping up. His physical ability and senses have been greatly strengthened in all directions. Even the light is dim and the distance is far away, and he can faintly see things in the distance. The scale of China is not large. In China, it is just a small county, but now, just outside such a city, Su Ran saw at least 3 insect nests in his direction at a glance. They are all war-type insect nests, towering above the ground like mountains. In the dark night, they look like jagged and huge ghosts. The plasma cannons above them are bombarding Giant from a long distance, and they carried a large number of war insects to attack that city. In the sky, swarms of migratory locusts were circling around the insect nest like dark clouds, but they had not launched an attack for a long time, as if they were waiting for a fighter opportunity. Under the darkening sky, the flames of the distant city burst out, like sparks dancing on the plain, but it was the fire of death from the outside. The city was besieged. Su Ran couldn't help but said, "Didn't your Minister Park say that he was just attacked?" Su Ran's face was very calm, but he was wailing in his heart. Judging from this situation, it's not as simple as being attacked. It looks like he's going to be surrounded and annihilated. Chapter 20 Misunderstanding. Park Sun-hoon fooled me, but I have no proof. This is what Su Ran is thinking at the moment. At this time, the sky was already dark, and looking from his position, the vast swarm of insects at the far end of the land undulated between the plains and hills like waves. The defenders in Giant are fighting stubbornly, but anyone with a discerning eye can see that they are going to die. Jin Seiyang was a little dazed about this, and said, the news we received is so. Minister Park dare not lie to you. Her Chinese is not very good, and this response was a bit blunt. Plater Leader Kui said at this time, a few days ago when this convoy was trapped in Giant, it was indeed not of such a large scale, but, Commander, don't worry, our troops are already on their way. The support will arrive within 2 days, and we will break through a life and death line. But, do you have a way to transport the materials in Giant out? At this time, Jin Ziyang slammed his mouth and said, you don't have to worry about it. Your Excellency, Commander's fleet is right above our heads and is following us covertly. Platoon Leader Kui was slightly taken aback when he said this, and instinctively raised his head to glance at the sky. The corners of Su Ran's mouth twitched, sweat dripped down, and he said, no. My fleet didn't come over. He glanced at Jin Ziyang over there, and thought to himself, this girl is really just making up her mind. There is no fleet. My fleet is all docked in the Xinjiang Special Zone. You must know what it means if my fleet appears here and is discovered by the swarm. Su Ran straightened his expression, The military intelligence on the battlefield is easy, no kidding. As for the issue of transporting supplies, you don't have to worry. As long as I arrive in Giant alone, I will have a way to take the supplies away. Jin Ziyang's expression was a little dull, as if he didn't expect such an answer from Su Ran. It seems that there is really no fleet coming. Platoon leader Kui nodded. We understand. We also know that even if your fleet arrives here, it will not launch an attack, Su Ran said. Besides, in my opinion, the support of the ground troops is basically useless. It is better to send a group of transport planes and air weapons to take me, and that's enough. As he spoke, Su Ran pointed to the sky. From what I've seen now, although the swarms of insects on the ground have formed a tendency to encircle, but the number of migratory locusts in the sky is currently limited, and they still haven't reached the expected standard, let alone launching an attack, but defending the insect nest. It is obviously a local missile attack. This is an opportunity for us. We can pass through the gap between the insect nest and the insect nest, and if the height is enough, we can delay the time for us to be discovered, and let us reach the city of Giant. Platoon leader Kui showed some embarrassment, but nodded after a moment of silence, and said, okay, no problem, I will contact the superior immediately, but judging from the current situation, if the transport plane can be transferred, at least in terms of time, it's going to be tomorrow. Su Ran glanced at the battlefield in the distance, and said, tomorrow is tomorrow, so I will go to battle tomorrow night. Moreover, by tomorrow night, I also have 2 transport planes available. They are mainly armed wingmen, and I may need some. If migratory locusts bite, it may be difficult for us to get out. The second half of Su Ran's words made everyone's eyes brighten. Jin Ziyang even looked like I knew you brought the aircraft, and instinctively glanced at the sky, not knowing what Su Ran was doing. Where is the aircraft hidden? Su Ran noticed the girl's gaze, but he didn't give any reply. The answer is simple. The transport plane he promised now is not in the sky at all, but in the system and is being manufactured. Name, Beetle Transport Aircraft, Level 2, Description. This is a standard medium-sized transport aircraft equipped with an anti-gravity engine and a cantilevered upper wing. It has a total length of 45 meters, a height of 16 meters, and a wingspan of 43 meters. It has a load of 60 tons, a maximum speed of more than 700 kilometers per hour, and a maximum ascent height of 15,000 meters. It is equipped with 2 30mm cannons and a low-power shield system. Cost 150 resource points. Just now, when Su Ran spoke, his thoughts changed slightly, and he spent 300 resource points to start the manufacture of 2 Beetle transport planes. The 2 transport planes in this area are not conspicuous. Su Ran's destroyer cannot appear on the land of the Koryo Peninsula, but it does not mean that this indistinguishable type of transport plane cannot. Platoon leader Kui also said, okay. Let's tentatively set tomorrow next. Their convoy once again backed away for a safe distance before settling down to rest in a small village that had been planned to be turned into ruins, empty of people and even more empty of insects. Platoon leader Kui and Su Ran's 2 combat teams are in charge of security. Platoon leader Kui passed on the news immediately, and received a response about an hour later. It was promised that 2 air formations would be arranged to open the way for Su Ran and attract firepower, but Platoon leader Kui couldn't leave, so Jin Ziyang came to Su Ran's room and said, Mr. Su, I don't know if there is one thing. Is it a bit abrupt for me to say it now? Tell me. Looking at the other party's expression, Su Ran already guessed the other party's intention, but he didn't say anything, but said, I said, Representative Jin, were you a member of your state agency system before? Yes, I worked in the procuratorate before the end of the world. The lady representative of Jin seemed not to expect that Su Ran would suddenly ask such a question. She couldn't help but quietly glance out of the dark window, thinking, could it be possible? Is this commander trying to flirt with me? The night outside the window was dark but not quiet. Although it was a long way from the battlefield, the loud noise of explosions, the howling of insect swarms, and even the occasional vibration of the ground could still be heard. Could it be that Your Excellency the commander likes excitement? However, although this commander is not a fresh meat, he is also very temperamental, and the other party is commander, one of the most powerful warlords on the planet now. Jin Ziyang suddenly fantasized, and this at that time, she heard Su Ran say, are you new, huh? Representative Jin was a little taken aback, feeling that this sentence was not easy to flirt with. I don't understand things, and I like to talk and fantasize. Su Ran glanced at the other party. Besides, it's also because of this, it's quite unpopular. Am I right? Chapter 21 The Blaster. Chapter 21 Blasterswit. Jin Zhang finally realized that what the commander in front of him was talking to him seemed. It didn't seem to be what he thought. Jin Zhang, who was stunned for a while before recovering, nodded repeatedly and Su Ran just nodded. Although this girl is a bit unlovable, he still wants to remind her that the political situation in the Koryo Peninsula is just as chaotic and corrupt. Such a little girl, talking nonsense, may become someone else's thorn in the side. Su Ran then asked, "Tell me, what do you want to tell me?" The gold representative was stunned for a long time before he realized that the commander in front of him was reminding himself that she didn't know how to feel. At this moment, when she heard Su Ran's words, she hurriedly said, "What our superiors mean is, the things you promised us." Guerrilla provided resources to Su Ran, and Su Ran also gave Guerrilla 2 promises. It's a deal between each other. Su Ran has 2 promises. First, it is naturally the extradition opportunity for 30,000 people in the new Beijing special zone. In fact, the Korean side has been striving for more opportunities for this number. It is not that Su Ran cannot relax. The Xinjiang special zone is very large and can definitely accommodate Koreans, but this does not mean that their food and supplies can also keep up. Su Ran can let more Koreans enter the Xinjiang special zone, and they may starve to death or even freeze to death. It's already October, the weather in the northeast, and that's no joke. The second point is the supply of weapons and equipment. This was a headache for Su Ran. It's not that he is unwilling to provide weapons and equipment. After all, the Koryo Peninsula is his gateway now, and the only direction that is not blocked by the swarms. It seems that this is the Korean People's Own war. Completely different results. Therefore, Su Ran was prepared to provide some military support from the very beginning. The obvious battleships and attack aircraft would not work, and some next-generation weapons should be carefully considered. However, the information given to Su Ran by Hoshino Junksha, the representative of Japan, completely dispelled his worries. Since Liu already has blaster guns, it shouldn't be a problem if there are blaster guns and turbo laser guns here, right? Therefore, when Su Ran came this time, he had already installed a lot of blasters in the storage space of his watch. During the time along the way, he also used the system to manufacture non-stop. That's why he could only build 2 transport planes. Transport planes and wingmen are not expensive. If Su Ran has enough time and manufacturing channels, he can create a decent Air Force transport team without the help of the Koreans. It has been a while since Su Ran entered the Korean peninsula. The Korean side has been cooperating and assisting, but Su Ran has hardly brought anything out. Of course, there is some anxiety there. If Su Ran ran away with the resources, they would cry, especially from the current situation. Su Ran didn't look like he was carrying supplies at all, which made people a little worried. Su Ran nodded and said, "Okay, I see." After 10 minutes, you asked Plato leader Kui to bring 2 people to my place. Jin Zhang was slightly taken aback, but didn't say anything, but nodded and went out on her own initiative. About 10 minutes later, platoon leader Kui with a dazed face came to Su Ran's room with 2 soldiers. But as soon as he entered, platoon leader Kui was startled. This small village has already been swept away by black beetles. There are no people or insects, and all kinds of resources have been plundered. It is good to barely have a house for people. Therefore, Su Ran's room is actually the same, empty. However, at this moment, as soon as platoon leader Kui came in, he saw all kinds of firearms on the ground. The light in the room was dim, but platoon leader Kui was also a veteran, so he could tell at a glance that these firearms were not any models he was familiar with. On the contrary, these firearms had strange shapes and were all next-generation weapons. Platoon leader Kui quickly checked and heard Su Ran say, "These are various types of blaster guns. I can guarantee that you have 2 of them, 1 rifle and 1 pistol." Kui Chengai was so shocked that he was speechless, looked at Su Ran in front of him, and said dully, "Your Excellency, Commander, where are you from? You don't have to worry about this." Su Ran said, "We have distributed this batch of equipment, and we will go to Jian tomorrow night." Kui Chengai couldn't help swallowing, feeling that the commander in front of him is really unpredictable. Could it be the legendary space equipment? Fortunately, he is the commander of the Xinjiang special zone. Looking at the blasters all over the place, Kui Chengai also began to feel that this commander can't really be the legendary alien, right? Otherwise, how did he master these incredible cutting-edge technologies? Although Huaxia has more powerful technology than Guerrilla, it is obviously not advanced to this point. Moreover, His Excellency the Commander is not affiliated with Huaxia. On the contrary, isn't he now in a cooperative relationship with Huaxia? However, Kui Chenggai also understood that it was also a sign of reassurance and sincerity that Su Ran took out these equipments at this time. Kui Chenggai no longer had any doubts, and immediately took his own people away with the equipment in this room, went directly outside, and distributed the equipment. Seeing these black technology weapons in their hands, these soldiers in North Korea are very excited. My God, is this a blaster? I heard a comrade in arms in the southern peninsula tell me that this is something that only appears in science fiction movies. This is our chance. If we can equip our entire army with such equipment, you must protect your excellency, commander. If Su Ran knew that what these people wanted was to equip the entire army of the Koryo Peninsula with blaster guns, she would probably have the heart to vomit blood. If he really has so many resource points, he will arm a Great China first. On the other side, the Koreans were chirping, and in the other corner, Zhu Feng was squatting in the corner with Li Rui, the leader of the awakened team, smoking a cigarette. Li Rui said, "What are they talking about? Why are you so excited?" Zhu Feng shook his head. "It is said that His Excellency Commander gave them a batch of blasters, although it's not quite right to say this, but now I suddenly feel that compared with us, these Korean people are simply poor bumpkins." Li Rui said, "If they see the dark energy armor, will they be crazy?" But at this time, Li Rui noticed an unfriendly look. Zhu Feng was staring at him resentfully. "I and Lauds all have no dark energy armor yet." Li Rui's face became a little embarrassed. Chapter 22 changes. If there are books, it will be long, and if there are no books, it will be short. The night goes away, the day comes, and then the day is swallowed up by the night again. Day and night alternate, so endless. The next night finally came. Su Ran directly launched the 2 completed Beetle transport planes, waited for the opportunity to come, and then slowly lifted off from the original place. The night was already dark, and at the end of the sky, an air formation belonging to the guerrilla side had appeared in sight. This is the Korean air formation responsible for the escort mission of Su Ran and the others. In fact, another air attack formation sent by the Korean side has already set sail. Their goal is not to escort, but to attract, and they exist as bait. They will attract the attention of migratory locusts in the sky for Su Ran and the others, and buy time and opportunities for Su Ran and the others, and everyone knows that such a bait mission is almost a fatal situation. The Beetle transport plane was slowly taking off. Su Ran's gaze swept over the dark earth and the sky of the Koryo Peninsula. The distant sky is shining brightly. Of course, Su Ran knows that these Koreans are working hard for themselves, not because he is a commander or a big shot, but because he can receive refugees from this country on behalf of the Xinjiang Special Zone, and can provide the country with the ability to fight against the insect swarm. Next generation device. The limited number of blaster guns is not the key point. What really makes the people of this country excited is the 20 high-power turbo-laser guns promised by Su Ran. 20 high-power turbo-laser cannons may not have much strategic significance in China, which has a huge land area, but in this country, it is different. Therefore, this moment, the soldiers of this country are making sacrifices and efforts to save their country resources. Su Ran will take them away, but Su Ran will not disappoint the bloodshed by these soldiers. Today the air formation is set sail. At the same moment, new capital. It was a cloudy day, and there were thick clouds in the sky, layer upon layer, covering the entire new capital city under a huge shadow. And Kiao Xiangjun was passing through the former Xinjiang airport and the building where the fleet is now stationed at high speed, and came to Yuan Licheng's room. Regardless of the guards outside, he pushed open the door and said in a deep voice, "Where is Su Ran?" "I to see him." Inside, Yuan Licheng was talking with Hoshino Zhengsha, the representative of Dongying. Seeing Kiao Xiangjun rushing in like this, both of them were slightly surprised. Yuan Licheng said, "Old Kiao, what are you doing? I want to see Su Ran. Where is he? Why has he become a shrinking turtle these 2 days? Even I dare not see him." Yuan Licheng glanced at Hoshino Zhengsha, who was smiling politely beside him. His expression changed several times. He slapped the table, and said in a deep voice, "Where's this place? Old Kiao, you and Su Ran have a good relationship, but don't forget, this is the fleet command building, and Su Ran is the commander of the entire fleet. Restrain yourself." The two people stared at each other tensely, and Kiao Xiangjun didn't speak for a long while, but Hoshino Zhengsha understood it. She smiled slightly, stood up slowly, bowed and saluted, and said, "Captain Kiao, I have heard about you for a long time, and seeing you today, you are indeed iron-blooded and masculine. In this way, Adjutant Yuan, what do you two say? If there is no business for me, I will go back first." Yuan Licheng glanced at the Dongying woman and nodded. Hoshino Zhengsha is going away slowly. When she disappeared outside the door, Yuan Licheng signaled the guards to close the door, exhaled slightly, and said softly, Old Kiao, I know that your status is special and your relationship with the commander is even more unusual, but you can't do this in front of the Dongying people. Although Su Ran has just defeated the Sky Brood, everyone now knows that he is a big boss who can't be provoked, but the image can't be ruined like this, can it? I know better than you. After Hoshino Junksha went out, Kiao Xiangjin's anger also subsided a little. He was not an irritable person in the first place, and his agitation just now was just a post. I kept interrupting, and there is no definite news. Will I come to you? Hearing what Kiao Xiangjin said, Yuan Lichen didn't seem surprised or surprised. He seemed to know what Kiao Xiangjin was talking about, and said, I really don't know what the exact news you are talking about. Kiao Xiangjin didn't say anything, so she simply pulled a chair over and sat across the desk from Yuan Lichen. The two of them stared at each other for more than 5 minutes before Yuan Lichen was defeated and said, okay, how did you know? Who told you? There is no impenetrable wall in this world. But don't worry, when Su Ran went to Korea at this juncture, I hadn't reported it to the military, and the Spore Life didn't know about it. Well, it was Li Yilin who said it. Kiao Xiangjin nodded. Are you using your sense of justice to deceive her again? Kiao Xiangjin snorted. Don't talk nonsense with me. Tell me, you are now talking with the representatives of the United States and Japan, and you issued a special assembly order yesterday. What are your plans? What Kiao Xiangjin said was what happened in the past 2 days. After Su Ran disappeared, Yuan Lichen took over the power in one hand and issued a series of orders in the name of the commander. The mobilization of the fleet has already begun, and the assembly of armed forces seems to mean that the whole army is going to attack. It's the plan you saw. I want to attack Dunpu. Yuan Lichen's eyes were heavy or crazy. Kiao Xiangjin said, you want to attack Dunpu? Given our current position, we must activate the fleet in order to achieve a feasible strategic attack, and dispatching the fleet, that is equivalent to tearing apart the swarm. There are still nearly 2 months before the agreed time for the peaceful existence of the Xinjiang Special Zone. If you do this, you will kill the people in Xinjiang, and even the entire fleet. Su Ran will never agree. Of course Su Ran won't agree. You should be clearer than I think about this. Yuan Lichen said, the fleet needs authority to attack, and that's precisely the authority that only the commander has. And old Kiao, you are the captain. You should know this better than me. Therefore, you are deliberately deceiving me and want me to tell my true thoughts? Because you think that since I have started to gather troops, it means that I can persuade Su Ran to tear up the peace, the reason for the treaty strike, right? But sorry, I can't tell you. It's classified, and you're a double-faced guy. Hearing these words, Kiao Xiangjin's face turned livid. Looking at Yuan Lichen in front of him, he thought to himself, why is this bastard like a human being? Chapter 23 Arrival. Su Ran and their flight formation were discovered by the locust swarm when they crossed nearly 2/3 of the distance. Fortunately, it was a small swarm of migratory locusts, which came from the dark night, and were quickly shot down by Su Ran's Koryo Air Force and the approaching giant defenders. Flames ignited all over the sky, and swarms of insects surged, but Su Ran's transport plane had already crossed the dangerous area and arrived at the interior of Giant. Looking down from this relatively high-altitude position, the feeling is more intuitive. The area of Giant is not large, and it is actually only a small county-level city in Huaxia. Now, in the outer circle of this city, a high wall has already been built, and under the wall as the ditch was dug full, and under the lights, you can still see garrison troops walking in it, and some soldiers and civilians are working hard all night to build the wall. Watching the transport plane cross the sky, many people raised their heads and looked up. Su Ran even noticed that a child who looked about 14 or 15 years old was standing on the fence like a building, with his upper body naked, holding tools in his hand, and waving excitedly into the sky. Jin Suhang also seemed to have seen this scene, and waved his hands with a smile, but unfortunately, with a barrier of the outer wall of the transport plane. Her childlike response is destined not to be seen by that child. In fact, most people don't even know what Su Ran's arrival means. They only know that this is an aircraft that humans can only use, and it should be their army, and this is enough to make the people who have been trapped for many days excited and happy. All our soldiers. This was Giant's first impression on Su Ran. The transport plane landed on an indescribable square with a local political style in downtown Giant. After coming down, the first thing Su Ran saw was the huge portrait of the leader of Korea in the square, which was particularly conspicuous under the night. Immediately afterwards, Giant's garrison officers greeted him to welcome the commander of the Xinjiang Special Zone. The Giant garrison showed the highest etiquette and sincerity. The highest commander, Zhang Xiangqin, Commander Zhang, came to greet him with all the officers above the regiment and dignitaries of a certain level. However, Mr. Zhang Xiankan Zhang can't speak Chinese, so Jin Ziyang can only translate it for him. Your Excellency, Commander, on behalf of Giant and North Korea, I welcome you. Su Ran nodded, and shook hands with a very enthusiastic Master Zhang. I am also very honored to come to your warland at such a time, and thank the people of your country for providing me with help. This is what it should be. Your Excellency, Commander, you are the hero in the hearts of our soldiers in North Korea. Ice City defeated the high-level brood of the insect swarm, wiped out the battle group of the sky brood on the northeast plain, and deterred the warship of the swarm Fugalo. Designating the new Beijing Special Zone, these are crowning achievements, the supreme achievement. Su Ran glanced at her translator Jin Ziyang, and the other party also cast a look, with a clear meaning. Mr. Zhang really said so. This Mr. Zhang is a bit cute, but Zhang Xiankan's excitement didn't seem fake. He held Su Ran's hand, and even through translation, he kept talking. It's really great that you can come this time. In our army, people have always said that you are an alien, and you don't care about human life or death at all, but I believe you do, and the help you provide us proves this. Those who say you ignore human beings, those who disregard human life can shut up. When she said these words, Jin Ziyang looked a little embarrassed. She also felt that Mr. Zhang was a little too excited. What he said was not only a bit of a part, but also likely to cause misunderstandings. However, as a guy who is not so clever and flexible, our representative Jin completed the translation without any hesitation, and the content is not bad at all. But this Mr. Jiang's enthusiasm does not seem to be feigned. Su Ran nodded in embarrassment, but at this time, the other party corrected his expression and said, okay, since your Excellency Commander is here, we have fulfilled our mission and can deliver the supplies that our soldiers desperately protected to you. Do you want to check now? Su Ran nodded. This is natural. He came here for the resource point. Of course it is impossible to do other things at this time at the moment. Zhang Xiankan personally led the team and led Su Ran to Jian's warehouse, and the officers behind this. Commander Zhang turned around at this time and left in a hurry. At this time, Su Ran heard the introduction and knew that all the cadres above the regiment level in Jian Dezhong and North Koryo garrison who are here now are not only from the military, but also from the militia and the government. At a glance, there are only a few people, and most of the clothes on their bodies are dirty, even bloody. Obviously, they have just been withdrawn from the battlefield. The commander had a face-to-face meeting without even saying a word to Su Ran, and they were about to return to the front line in a hurry. Looking at this scene, Su Ran was also a little touched. Zhang Xiankan gathered these people to greet him. Of course he did not engage in bureaucratic formalism. Although Su Ran was the commander, he was not in his system at all. The other party is trying to curry favor with him, and the purpose of such a division commander bringing a group of officials to curry favor with Su Ran? Why doesn't Su Ran know? It's nothing more than because he can help them and this country that is in dire straits. The national conditions are different. China can afford to delay this war, and it can even drag it on stronger and stronger, but the people of Korea cannot afford it. If it continues, the people of this country will be slaughtered, the resources will be swept away, and the country will not be able to survive. The anxiety of saving the country, along the way, Su Ran can almost see it in every Korean soldier he saw and came into contact with. You tell Mr. Zhang, if he is busy, he doesn't have to stay here and entertain me himself. Su Ran asked Jin Ziyang to relay. Jin Ziyang was slightly taken aback, as if she didn't expect Su Ran to say such a thing. She nodded and finished the report. That Mr. Zhang smiled and said, it's okay, it's okay. When you come, our mission has been completed. Guaranteeing that you get the resources is the moment when our mission ends. However, now that China is surrounded on all sides, how do you plan to leave with a large amount of raw ore, wood and other resources? How do you plan to leave? Su Ran asked back. Before Zhang Xiankan could answer, they came to the warehouse. Mr. Zhang said, this is the place. Previously, it was an air raid shelter that was half above ground and half underground. Later, it was turned into half ordnance office. I didn't expect it to be of great use this time. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 24. Resources available. It was a former air raid shelter in the center of the city. Although it looked obviously repaired, at a glance, Su Ran still had the construction style of an air raid shelter in China in the last century. Moreover, because the air raid shelter in the city was rebuilt and the industrial level was poor. The reason is that the appearance here is really not very good, and even gives people a feeling of neither fish nor fowl, but inside, it's all materials. Mr. Zhang arranged all his guards here and lined them up neatly. When Su Ran arrived, they lined up to welcome them. Many of them were young people. They looked 17 or 18 years old, and their faces were full of immature, but they accomplished their task in this air raid shelter. There are the materials that Korea promised to Su Ran. I'm sorry, there should have been more, but transportation has become difficult, and we have been repeatedly attacked by insect swarms, and we have lost at least half of our supplies. Please forgive me. As for how many there are here, I haven't done any statistics or wartime situations. I really can't tell the difference, although Korea has always claimed that they had produced all the available raw material resources they could produce during the war. Su Ran knew that they still had some reservations. However, this is normal. Guerrilla needs help, but it is impossible for them to exchange all available resources with Su Ran for help in times of war. Everything is a scarce resource. Su Ran nodded, and through Jin Hyang's mouth, Mr. Zhang, who seemed very embarrassed, was relieved. Then he took a step forward, walking forward step by step under the surprised and curious eyes of the young soldiers of the guard company guarding the air raid shelter. Raising his arms, the light burst out at this moment. Su Ran didn't mean to hide anything. Anyway, this is almost nothing in the Xinjiang special zone, and now his strength makes it unnecessary for him to hide anything. The mountains of resources in the air raid shelter gradually disappeared from people's sight. It took about an hour, and Nuodao's air raid shelter became empty. At this time, the light on Su Ran's watch was converged. Bit instantly disappears invisible, and when he turned his head, he found that Jin Hyang, Kui Chenggayu and even Jiang Xianqin were all looking at him with that stunned expression, and the soldiers of the guard company and the accompanying soldiers were all speechless. On the other hand, although Zhu Feng and Li Rui, who came with Su Ran, were also on guard meticulously, they all showed a little complacency at this time. Isn't it strange how our commander took away the supplies? This is the answer. Looking at the expressions of these Korean people, Zhu Feng and the others thought about their surprise when they first heard about Su Ran's method of recovering materials, and this sense of pride and superiority became more and more intense. There was silence in the field, and Su Ran didn't rush to speak, but checked the number of his resource points immediately. What a joke! A large amount of resources are credited to the account. Who is in the mood to chat at this time? Although the materials prepared for him by the Koreans were lost a lot during the transportation process, they were far more than the resources that Su Ran, who was surrounded on three sides, obtained from Huaxia. Leaving aside the differences in the conversion rates of different types of resources, the total amount of resources in this batch, the amount was at least 1.2 million tons, and when the 1.2 million tons fell, the number of resource points displayed on Su Ran's watch also reached an unprecedented number. Resource points: 437,601 points, 430,000 points. Su Ran felt as if little stars appeared in front of her eyes. There is a super battleship of 200,000 points. There is a gunboat. Here comes the heavy bomber. Even if you add the possible feedback from the factories I have opened in the Xinjiang special zone in the future, Su Ran calculated quietly in her heart, and felt that she even had the money to build a Gundam team. Although the military and its own consultants and experts say that Gundam has no use value, but in a word, the entry of this resource point will greatly alleviate Su Ran's resource point embarrassment and solve his biggest problem of no points. And not only that, the 400,000 resource points entered into the account made Su Ran a big step towards level 5. Su Ran even felt that the total number of 1 million resource points was already within sight. Hey, Su Ran couldn't help but let out a laugh. Fortunately, our commander realized in time that there were still people watching, so he stopped his voice in time, looked at Mr. Zhang and the others eagerly at him, and coughed dryly. With a sound, he said, "I'm fine." Jin Hyang was stunned for a long time before recovering, and quickly conveyed the meaning of Su Ran's words to Mr. Zhang over there. Master Zhang smiled and asked, "Your Excellency, Commander, are you satisfied?" "Satisfied. Absolutely satisfied." Su Ran put on a serious face. To be honest, Guerrilla has always given him an unreliable feeling. If it weren't for the fact that the supply line of Huaxia was almost completely cut off by the swarm, Su Ran, although he might not really cooperate with the Koreans, this time it was beyond his expectation. According to Su Ran's original idea, as long as this trip can bring in 100,000 resource points, it will not be a loss, because as long as he can start with this 100,000 resource points, before the time limit agreed with the Zerg swarm in December, Su Ran will not lose money. They must be able to save enough resources to build a battleship with 200,000 resource points, and the ship will be built successfully, but Su Ran didn't expect that today it was in place in one step. The resource points in Garriga were 300,000 more than Su Ran expected, which was several times higher in place. Not only that, but of course Su Ran understood what Master Zheng meant. He said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, I promise that the equipment for Korea will not be bad. 20 heavy-duty turbo laser guns, I will adjust it to 30 for you. 30 gates?" Hearing Su Ran's words, Jin Zhiang showed an expression of disbelief. Although she is very nervous, she also knows that this time when they cooperate with Su Ran, what they are looking for is the heavy-duty and destructive energy weapon turbo laser that Su Ran promised. The turbo laser cannon is not a laser weapon, but a directed energy weapon of particle beams. The Koreans hope to use this weapon to help them attack the swarm's brood. After all, the use of nuclear weapons may also achieve a certain effect, but the damage area and harm of nuclear weapons are too large, given the size of Korea. Nuclear weapons will never be their first choice in local operations. Therefore, Jin Zhiang knows what 30 turbo laser cannons mean, that is doubled combat power. On the other side, Kui Chenggayu took a step forward, looked at Su Ran excitedly, and said, "Is what you said true?" Chapter 25 Mr. Zhang in number 039, S determination. Chapter 25 Mr. Jiang's decision. Kui Chenggayu looked at Su Ran, stretched out his hand excitedly, waved 3 fingers, and said, "Your Excellency, Commander, is what you said true? Are you willing to provide us with 30 turbo laser cannons?" "Of course." Su Ran smiled back. He only promised $20 before, not because he didn't want to help, but because he didn't have enough resources. Now that he got 400,000 yuan, why don't he help these people more? The turbo laser cannon is one of the creations after upgrading to level 4. The cannon body reaches 70 meters, and a salvo of 20 laser cannons can be used to destroy a mobile war brood. Although Su Ran advertised to Koryo that this thing is a heavy-duty directed energy weapon, in fact, in the system's label, it is just a conventional large-scale warship attack weapon, and it theoretically costs 200,000 resource points under the 4th level manufacturing list. It is a modular unit that can be assembled by warships, but it is completely independent as a weapon module, so it can be taken out and used separately. A module of turbo laser guns costs 800 resource points, 20 guns is 16,000 resource points, and 30 guns is 24,000 resource points. For Su Ran, who only got 400,000 resource points, it was just a fraction. Moreover, for Su Ran, the insect swarm has blocked the 3 directions of the Xinjiang special zone, and it is difficult for him to transport his black technology through Huaxa's channels. He can't go to the capital by himself. And Kyoto is too far away. It's not that Su Ran doesn't support Huaxa. Before that, he didn't give Huaxa too many weapons and equipment because of insufficient resources. This time, the promise to Korea is also a mutual transaction. You give me resources, and I will give you equipment. Otherwise, the Koreans will not just give you the resources on their own land like that. And the most important point is, my fleet is all parked in Huaxa. Is there still a laser cannon? As for helping the Korean people, Su Ran also thought carefully. Now he only has this one portal left, and he must not lose it. The Koreans must resist the attack of the insect swarm, at least not be defeated until their fleet is fully formed. Otherwise, under the besieged situation, the moment Su Ran's fleet is formed, there is no need to attack anyone. All-out war is about to start in Xinjiang, with enemies on all sides, but at this time, Zheng Xianqin was the one who was most at a loss. This Mr. Zheng looked at the excited Kui Chenggayu and the unbelievable Jin Zhiang with a blank expression, completely unaware of what they were talking about. Fortunately, Representative Jin finally reacted at this time. He quickly told Mr. Zheng about Su Ran's promise. Hearing that Su Ran wanted to provide them with 10 more turbo laser cannons, Zheng Xianqin's face flushed, and he said, "Quick, Representative Jin, thank you, Commander." "Thank you for his generosity." Jin Zhiang nodded, and immediately conveyed Mr. Jiang's thanks to Su Ran. But Su Ran just shook his head, and said, "The arrival of the swarm is an unprecedented invasion. This is not a national disaster, nor a national disaster, but a racial disaster, the end of the earth, and a war of extermination. If I have enough ability, I am willing to arm the whole world, and everyone can board a battleship to fight, but unfortunately, I can't do it now." Jin Zhiang looked at Su Ran in a daze, as if he didn't expect Su Ran to say such a word. After a moment of silence, he translated it to Zheng Xianqin. At this time, Su Ran didn't give Zheng Xianqin a chance to speak, so he said, What are your plans next? Mr. Zhang. I arrived in this area yesterday and stayed behind the swarm for a day and night. I can basically see clearly that the swarm of insects has almost formed a siege, and not only that, the migratory locusts are also gathering in large numbers. Now they are only conducting a preliminary attack. However, when the migratory locusts are in place, I think it will launch an attack immediately, and the sky and the earth will start to strangle Giant, and according to what I've seen, it doesn't seem like any support army is rushing towards you. If this continues, Giant may not be able to hold on. What are your plans? What Su Ran said was still very conservative. In fact, in his opinion, how could this be unstoppable? It's obvious that I can't hold it anymore. Hearing Su Ran's words, Zhang Xianqin shook his head and said, Your Excellency, our mission has been completed. What I'm more concerned about now is how do you leave Giant? Or do you go through the air? The last one in my army Aegon ship was destroyed 3 days ago. I'm afraid it will be difficult to help you, but our troops may be able to attack a siege hive as alert to help you leave well, and, I don't know, where are the 30 turbo laser cannons you promised us? Are these equipment also brought here by you using advanced space technology? Zhang Xianqin's expression was calm, and there didn't seem to be anything abnormal, but Su Ran was not an idiot. How could he not hear the death will in Mr. Jiang's words? The task of Zhang Xianqin's department is to surround the trap Giant's resources for trading with Su Ran. But now that the deal has been concluded, and given the location of Giant in the war zone, the North Korean city has completely lost its meaning of existence. Therefore, no reinforcements will come to reinforce them. Mr. Zhang probably knows this already. After the task is completed, they can die for the country of course. Before that, Zhang Xianqin also hoped to complete the last task, which was to personally send the commander, Su Ran, out of Giant. Therefore, at this moment, Su Ran couldn't help falling into silence, but Jin Sohyang was obviously not that perceptive. She quietly said in Korean, I said, Mr. Zhang, it seems that you didn't answer the question of your Excellency Commander directly. Zhang Xianqin shook his head, looked at Su Ran, and said, Please tell your Excellency Commander that Giant is dangerous. It is best for him to leave tonight. Our department will fully cooperate with your retreat. Of course, our retreat is already underway. In the plan, please don't worry about it, Commander, the situation of the war is big. As the commander said, today's human beings should no longer be divided into countries, but a whole community with a shared future for mankind. In war, only when everyone is in their proper position and does what they should do well can we usher in the dawn we all expect. From Su Ran's reaction, Mr. Zhang could already tell that Su Ran understood his will to die. They have already completed the task, which led to the cooperation with Su Ran this time, but at the same time, the encirclement circle of the insect swarm has also been formed. There is no need to bring someone in again. The best destination is for them to fight to the death of Giant. Therefore, Mr. Zhang said a lot of seemingly irrelevant things, but he was actually persuading Su Ran. He hoped that the commander from Xinjiang Special Zone would pretend that he didn't know anything, and just leave. Chapter 26 We Killed a Bloody Path. Su Ran understood Mr. Jiang's meaning, but it was difficult for him to keep silent. He could not accept such a state of affairs. He came here to complete the transaction, but tens of thousands of people would die because of it. This is illogical and not in line with Su Ran's logic. Of course, Korea will get great help from him in this transaction. From Korea's side, what they get from Su Ran is almost what they can't get in any other place, even the whole world range that other countries crave but cannot obtain. But from Su Ran's point of view, Su Ran has indeed gained something from Korea's side, and the richness of this gain has exceeded his own expectations, and in return, he didn't want to give up these Koryo warriors. Su Ran asked, Now in Giant, how many people are there? Zhang Xianqin glanced at Su Ran, and he realized that it was his attitude that Su Ran didn't keep silent at the moment. 6 hours ago, our last statistics showed that there were more than 9,000 fighters still capable of fighting. Now it is being divided into fortifications in the surrounding area of Giant, and the number of others, including the wounded, militiamen, confidential personnel, non-combatants, and civilians, is not very comprehensive, and there are probably more than 20,000 alive since the Zerg invasion. All the people are soldiers. In various parts of the world, there is almost no clear boundary between combatants and ordinary people, especially in a country with a small number of people like the Koryo Peninsula. Everyone takes up arms and fights. More than 30,000 people. This is not a small amount. Su Ran took a deep breath and said, Mr. Zhang, I know you and your subordinates are determined to die for the country, but this is not the solution to the problem. We must evacuate together. Zhang Ziyankin was slightly taken aback when he heard Jin Xiang's translation, and said, "This must not be the case, Commander. You don't understand how many bugs are out there now, and it is impossible for us to evacuate all of us. Staying here will be a waste of time. Our final destination, and we have completed the handover of tasks and supplies. We have completed our mission, and I have no regrets." That's the way it is said, but everyone knows that the truth is absolutely not the case. Even if Zhang Ziyankin expresses his will to die, it doesn't mean that he will really give up struggling. He is a soldier, and at this moment, there are more than 30,000 people in the giant area. How can he really give up the lives of these 30,000 people? He said so. It's nothing more than hoping that Su Ran can leave early. Su Ran said, "When I was in Ice City, I defeated the brood nest in Ice City. In the Xinjiang Special Zone, I defeated the brood in the northeast plain of China. Therefore, I know better than you how many broods there are here. Bugs. There's no way the city will be evacuated, but I can't let it go. This city is in trouble because of me. It can be said that everyone here today is related to my cooperation with guerrilla. So, do you think I will really give up on you? Choose to be silent, take people away from Giant and watch you wait here to die?" After Su Ran said these words seriously, his eyes were like lightning, and he looked at Mr. Zhang in front of him. Even if he didn't understand, Zhang Ziyankin seemed to have felt Su Ran's meaning from it. This is not hypocrisy, but a fact. Without the cooperation between him and Gali would not have carried out such a large-scale collection and transportation of materials, and would not have attracted the attention of the swarm, let alone the current battle of swords and virtues. The soldiers gathered here today are all here to achieve the cooperation between Su Ran and Gali, and to keep these resources. In listening to Su Ran's words, Jin Xiang also looked at the person beside him in surprise. To be honest, along the way, although Su Ran also gave her a lot of surprising things, in fact, most of them were amazing black technologies, but Su Ran gave her the feeling of being ordinary. Even ordinary, it doesn't even look like the legendary commander. Until this moment, the Jin representative was stunned for a moment, and then he recovered from his trance and conveyed Su Ran's meaning to Zhang Ziyankin, but this Master Zhang seemed to have realized it long ago. He also stared at the commander in front of him, nodded his head, and said in a deep voice, "Then, respected commander, what is your plan?" Su Ran said, "Let's fight at Bloody Road." It was getting dark. It was a day without stars and moons. Outside Giant City, all kinds of monsters howled one after another. At several important checkpoints, there were even swarms of black beetles launching uninterrupted attacks. Gunshots, cannons, howls and wailing seemed to never stop. Especially today, the urban area of Giant is also dark, giving people a feeling of oppression and dullness. But in this gloomy, ghost-like city, there are a large number of people on the move. There were many Koreans, including fighters and ordinary survivors. They walked through the streets and alleys, collecting all available weapons, food, medicine and necessities. A large number of combatants were moving forward, and vehicles were moving forward. But on the main road in Giant City, two heavy-duty tractor trucks are slowly moving forward in the dark streets. You can only see clearly when you get close. Behind these two trucks, there is a cold steel giant. The streamlined sound of the cannon and the cold and dull gun barrel. It seems that one can feel the power and terror of this death-killing weapon just by looking at it. That is the natural of human beings for huge weapons. That is the turbo laser cannon created by Su Ran long before coming to the Koryo Peninsula. Su Ran had already built 2 turbo laser cannons through the system. After all, if you are talking about cooperation with others, you can't even get things out of your own side, can you? Where is the credibility? But what Su Ran didn't expect was that the Korean representative, Minister Park Sun-hoon, didn't care about this at all. He just wanted to hide in the Xinjiang Special Zone, and had no intention of inspecting the goods. Therefore, the 2 turbo laser cannon has never been launched by Su Ran, and it has been put into use until today. The principle of the turbo laser cannon is very similar to the blaster gun. It is not a literal laser weapon, therefore, Su Ran can afford this thing without using the battleship openly. After all, Lao Mei already has blaster technology, and it is nothing to see a turbo laser cannon based on blaster and leading technology. Even if the swarm were aware of it, it would be impossible to launch an attack on the Xinjiang fleet. However, these 2 turbo laser cannons will become the life-saving straw for Giant's 30,000 Koryo soldiers and survivors. Chapter 27 Attack. The frontal position at the north exit of Giant City. Standing on the observation post, Zhang Ziyankin put down the night vision binoculars in his hand, looked at platoon leader Kui Chengayukui who was standing beside him, and asked, in Korean, "What do you think of your commander's plan?" Kui Chengayu shook his head and said, Korean language. To be honest, if anyone else, even a general, said such outrageous plans, I would think he is crazy, but that is the commander, Your Excellency. The Battle of Ice City, the Battle of Xinjiang, the great military exploits, plus those 2 turbo laser cannons. I really don't know how to judge when describing. Kui Chenggayu used 3 words in a row before saying it. Obviously he didn't know how to use positive language to evaluate Su Ran's plan. Zhang Ziankin, Korean language. No matter what, I think he can bring us hope, and that is His Excellency Commander. At this moment, this Master Jiangzai seemed to become farther away, as if he was also on the battlefield between Bingcheng and Xinjiang. Kui Chenggayu said solemnly, in Korean, no matter what, it is our honor to fight side by side with Your Excellency Commander. Zhang Ziankin lowered his head and looked down under this rather high sentry tower. The convoy was whizzing by. He and Kui Chenggayu turned back to the command vehicle. Their command car is at the forefront of the entire convoy. Su Ran was among them. The command vehicles of Guerrilla and the Huaxia military are slightly behind, but they are enough. When Mr. Zhang came back, he immediately began to confirm the situation. Feedback from the surrounding areas of Giant came like rain. Just half an hour ago, the entire defense line in the Giant area began to shrink in the center, and at this moment, more than 9,000 Koryo soldiers and more than 20,000 other personnel in the Giant City area have gathered at the main line of the north exit road area. They will go out from this position at this moment. Su Ran is monitoring the entire battle situation through the vision sent back by the drone in the sky. 2 reconnaissance drones provided by the Koryo military are flying across the sky, skimming over the convoy, moving in the direction of the north exit, flying all the way to the north, crossing the front line of the battle between the 2 sides, all the way to the rear of the swarm. When we got there was really no light, especially the moonlight and starlight are very dim today. Looking down from the sky, we can only see a large area of moving shadows in the picture sent back by the drone. They are next to each other, advancing densely, as if in a large army. Those are black beetles, and beyond these black beetles and forward, there is a huge shadow. It was a mobile war insect nest, as high as a 7-story building, slowly advancing under the protection of the insect swarm, approaching the direction of Giant step by step. Originally, most of these war nests were located around Giant to maintain the siege of the black beetles. But just over an hour ago, these insect nests that towered like mountains around Giant all started to move. Under the protection of the black beetle swarm, they approached Giant at an extremely slow speed, forming a siege. Total strangulation. The reason for the swarm's change is not difficult to guess. The high probability is that the unknown air formation that entered Giant before made them feel vigilant and abnormal, and planned to take an annihilation plan in advance before a large number of migratory locusts arrived. This will cost them a little more, but it doesn't matter. In the picture sent back by the drone, the war worm nest is like a huge shadow lying in the darkness, as if the legendary old ruler has come back to life at this moment. And the picture ended here, because it was too close to the insect nest and the sky was too dark. Su Ran failed to find the approaching locusts in time. The leading drone was directly hit by the barbs shot by the locusts, and crashed in the air, and after the second drone successfully recorded the scene of the crash of the first drone, it also lost the picture in an instant. Obviously it was also destroyed in the sky. Su Ran couldn't help but sigh regretfully at this time. Zhang Ziankin's team had also assembled, and he cast his eyes on Su Ran. Your Excellency, our preparations have been completed. More than 9,000 people from our department have all assembled at the north exit, ready to fight at any time. Of course Mr. Jiang's Korean language, Su Ran, could not understand, and the whole process was translated by Representative Kim Xiang. In fact, there are also some translation equipment in the system, which can perform simultaneous interpretation, and the accuracy rate is quite impressive, but Su Ran has no plans to use this equipment. He glanced at Jin Xiang, who was huddled in the corner of the slightly crowded command vehicle, doing translation work. Seriously, if I took out the translation equipment, wouldn't Representative Jin be laid off? Jin Xiang obviously didn't think so much, and has been doing the only thing she can do now conscientiously, and at the same time, she is still a little uneasy. Will I die after this battle? Probably not, probably not. Your Excellency Commander is by my side. Your Excellency Commander is by my side. Mr. Zhang is also by my side, with the 2 high officials. My current position is the safest position in the entire team. However, Su Ran has already responded to Zhang Ziankin's words. Mr. Zhang, advance another 500 meters and cross our trench. It won't be too late for us to open fire after the Black Beetle finds us. Naturally, there was no need for Su Ran to remind him. Zheng Xianqin had been fighting against the swarm for a long time and knew what to do at the gloomy north exit of Giant City. A huge human convoy is slowly advancing at the forefront as Zheng Xianqin's few remaining mechanized units. Behind this unit is the leading command vehicle, and the command vehicle is followed by 2 turbo laser cannons. The convoy is moving forward, but the turbo laser cannons have already started to warm up and start. Zheng Xianqin has concentrated most of the energy in the city, plus the energy in the turbo laser cannon's own energy storage module. In this battle, the 2 turbo laser cannons, it can fire at least 7 times and complete 7 rounds of strikes. The convoy was advancing, but the buzzing of the turbo laser cannon became more and more intense, like a bow that was accumulating power, making an angry cry. At this moment, the frontier bug swarm noticed something abnormal. The information was immediately transmitted backwards from the cutting-edge Black Beetle network, passed over the war insects, and reached a mother nest that was also advancing slowly in the rear. And at the moment when the information arrived at the insect nest and the insect nest had not responded, the Korean infantry in the trenches at the northern exit of Giant began to retreat in an all-round way, revealing the towering armored troops behind them, and the 2 roaring doors turbo laser cannon. Chapter 28. Did you just want to recruit me? The news of human beings' changes is being passed on among the swarms, but the 2 approaching turbo laser cannons have roared and let out a death roar. Amidst the roar, the Black Beetle swarm in the front was hit by 2 flashes of light, and the flames set off by the explosion instantly brightened the pupils of everyone watching this scene. And then, the whole army pressed on the mechanized troops at the forefront, opened fire in an all-round way, advancing along the bombardment of the turbo laser cannon to expand the results of the battle, followed by a mixed combat team composed of infantry and survivors. The battle formation of 30,000 people was irregular, but there was an explosion of astonishing consistency in action because the end of the world has developed to this day. Even those so-called survivors will no longer be so-called ordinary people. Most of the survivors who can survive today are fighters who can take up weapons by themselves and fight against the swarm. Even if they couldn't kill the Black Beetle, it didn't mean they didn't have fighting power. The sound of guns and artillery began to resound, and in the center of the array, some soldiers who had not yet met the enemy sang the military song of North Korea. Although Su-ran couldn't understand it, she could still hear the arrogance in it. Even Jin Se-young, who was born in South Korea, looked complicated at this time, and seemed quite shocked. No matter how the north and south of this country were once divided, today they are all Koreans, and what they want to defend is their homeland. However, Su-ran was ignoring Zheng Xianqin's obstruction, and jumped out of the command vehicle. When he turned his head, he found that Jin Se-young also jumped down. She didn't have Su-ran's physical fitness, and almost fell into the mud. He grabbed the other party and caught the other party with a perfect princess hug, which saved the dizzy Jin representative from the terrible end of throwing himself into disability. Su-ran frowned and said, "What are you doing?" However, Jin Se-young's face was flushed because of Su-ran's princess hug, and it took a long time to realize that the commander was talking to herself, and quickly said, "Don't do it, not, Your Excellency Commander, I have to follow you, my task is to follow you, to be your guide and interpreter." Su-ran was speechless for a while, not knowing whether to criticize or praise. Although Jin Se-young is dizzy, he is different from Park Shang-sun's cunning. He is a person who can and dares to do things. Su-ran even has a heart to track. The battlefield is chaotic. As soon as this idea came out, Su-ran didn't think about it, and said, "Okay, would you like to come to my place?" After saying these words, Su-ran regretted a little bit. Although he thought this girl was okay, there was a very important problem here. If this Korean girl is not a talent to make at all, if she continues to be dumb like this, then wouldn't it be a loss to recruit them yourself? Su-ran immediately regretted it, but Jin Se-young did not respond. What do you mean? Your Excellency Commander, my Chinese is not very good, I don't understand it very well. At this time, the car of Li Rui, the captain of Su-ran's awakened guard, had already arrived at Su-ran's side. Su-ran quickly got into the car and said, "It's okay. I just said something casually. It's meaningless." Don't understand. Representative Jin behind him was still ignorant. But he also got into the car immediately. After all, the entire team is moving now, and if she stands here for a while longer, she will probably be run over to death by the car behind. That is obviously a serious way to die from being thrown. Moreover, our representative Jin was obviously not as brave as she showed. After leaving the command vehicle and recovering from the hug of the princess just now, the sound of guns, screams and howls of monsters around her became very clear. She also trembled, her already white complexion became even paler, and tremblingly got into Suran's car. Suran left Zhang Xianqin's command vehicle because it would be enough to leave it to Master Zhang in the future, and he didn't need to stay on it anymore. It would be more appropriate to join Zhu Feng and Li Rui's own personal guards and act together. As soon as Suran got into the car, Li Rui said, "Your Excellency Commander, the fleet's awakened team is ready, please give me an order." Suran smiled and said, "Follow the convoy, it's not the time for us to make a move." After speaking, Suran paused for a moment, turned her head and glanced at the two turbo laser cannons surrounded by layers of guards in the convoy, and said in a deep voice, "This breakout is very difficult, but also very simple. Blowing up the insects in this direction, a nest of broods can blaze a trail of blood." Hearing these words, Li Rui swallowed involuntarily. Suran said it easily, but it's not so easy. The battle here is not a fleet, but a mixed Korean land force that has been trapped for a long time and is exhausted. However, this was also the only chance. The swarm would never have thought that the giant guerrilla garrison, who is waiting for death, would suddenly strike back, and the target was one of their worm nests. If the insect nest can be defeated, although the overall war insects cannot be out of control, it will greatly delay their information exchange and strategic guidance, giving them a lot of opportunities to break through. However, it is obviously not the time for Suran and the others to attack at this moment. Zhang Xianqin is also trying his best to ensure the safety of the commander, protecting Suran's convoy in the middle position, while his own troops are fully facing. In addition, fight the insects head-on. The two turbo laser cannons were recharging, but they stopped firing for a long time. The turbo laser cannon is not a weapon of large-scale destruction. Its real purpose is to kill the insect nests in the front. They will not fire until they are approaching the target insect nest and the Legion is slowly advancing. Flashes of light came and went, flames rose, and the sound of killing was everywhere. On the outer circle of the car formation, the Black Beetle and the soldiers had already strangled together without distinguishing each other. Those people will become victims, staying in their current positions forever, holding back the Black Beetle's attack, and opening a continent leading to life gates for more fighters and survivors behind them. The hive is getting closer and there were more and more Black Beetles. The flames of the battle only illuminated the land on this side, but from a farther position, there was a sound like a mountain roar and a tsunami. It was the sound of thousands of Black Beetles running and neighing. The most terrifying sound on the battlefield. All the troops in the encirclement circle of the insect swarm outside Giant are leaning towards the north exit of Giant at this moment. Suran's convoy was still at the center of the entire attacking team, and under layers of protection, he didn't even see a single Black Beetle. And at this moment, in the oppressive and dull atmosphere, Jin Zhiang, who was sitting at the back, suddenly said, "Your Excellency Commander, did you just want to recruit me?" Chapter 29, Time to Attack. In the suddenly bright and dark running car, Jin Zhiang poked half of his head slightly, his eyes flickered at Suran, and all the surprises flickered inside. "What do you mean by what you said just now? Are you trying to recruit me?" Li Rui in front glanced back in surprise, and then quickly turned back after noticing Suran's stern gaze. With a serious face on his surroundings and Suran, he looked at the gold representative, and really wanted to complain. "I just realized, sister, your reflex arc is too long, right?" But before he could say anything, the Jin representative, who had been very nervous under the sound of gunfire before, became more and more excited, and even grabbed Suran's hand, saying, "Your Excellency, if it is an honor in my life to join your fleet, I am willing. I am willing." Suran glanced at the girl's claws holding her hand, the corners of her eyes twitched, and said, You can't go back on your word." At this time, there was an earth-shattering loud noise from a distance. Some weapon was detonated, and the whole earth seemed to shake. Jin Zhiang was startled, but refused to let go of Suran's hand. With that expression, "Well, it's like a working class with a monthly salary of more than 2,000 yuan suddenly found a job with an annual salary of 500,000 yuan. Anyway, such a dizzy guy, even if he is not a man to make, he is not a threat, is he?" Suran exhaled, and said, "Okay, I promise you, but isn't your treason, how does this count?" Jin Zhiang was as excited as a child who got a favorite toy. "This is not considered treason. Before we went on a mission, the Prime Minister told us that if we have the opportunity to join your fleet, let us never hesitate, because if the swarm is defeated in the future, whoever can have a place in your fleet, whose country is likely to have the power to influence the world situation." After saying this, Jin Zhiang immediately realized that he seemed to have said something wrong, and quickly covered his mouth. Suran's face turned dark, and Li Rui, who was sitting in the front co-pilot, couldn't bear it any longer, and said straight to the point, I think, after your Prime Minister told you so much, he must think that you are the kind of person who has no chance to join our fleet." Rui laughed in his heart. The Prime Minister of South Korea probably never imagined that such a dizzy guy would be valued by the commander, and at this moment, the huge roar sounded again in the field. That was the second time the turbolaser fired 15 minutes into the battle. They had narrowed the distance between the turbolaser cannon and the target warhive to 1,000 meters. In fact, as a lethal weapon for interstellar warfare, turbolaser cannons are not starry sky level over the horizon strike weapons, but their attack range is quite impressive. In the urban area of Giant, they can actually snipe Giant City, any of the war insect nests in the outer encirclement, but the reason why they are drawn so close is that Su-Ran's goal is not as simple as destroying a few insect nests. The combat significance of these two turbolaser guns is to help them open the door. Therefore, it is necessary to annihilate a worm nest at close range, so that when other worm nests can't catch up, they can blaze a trail through the ashes of the worm nest destruction and protrude from the encirclement. And now, the distance has been reached. The turbolaser roared and delivered piercing blows. The migratory locusts in the distant sky were illuminated by flashes. The first round of bombardment hit the shield of the war worm nest, and the moving mountain suddenly stopped, and a large number of black beetles began to retreat and defend. Su-Ran was very confident in using one insect nest as a breakthrough, and the insect swarm seemed even more confident. A moment the giant trapped army broke out from the north exit, the insect swarm should have seen their strategy, but they still stubbornly hold this insect nest here. They must think that even if humans can destroy this hive, that would take enough time for their hordes to swallow the human army. Therefore, this nest of war worms lies here, completely in the posture of a head-on contest. Seeing this scene, Su-Ran's heart sank slightly. He only knows that this mobile war nest is the battlefield mobile unit of the swarm. Although it has a command function and is equipped with a plasma cannon, its function, and defense are far lower than the real local nest. Compared with the Ice City brood, neither the size nor the defensive power is at the same level. Far from it and the turbo laser cannon, this is also the first time that Su-Ran has used it in actual combat. After all, this is a unit module that was only available after the system was upgraded to level 4. After upgrading to level 4, Su-Ran has almost never participated in combat. He combined the computer with the parameters to calculate. What is certain is that the two turbolaser cannons can tear apart the war brood, but now, he was slightly shaken because he doesn't know enough about the parameters of the war brood in detail, although he has obtained a lot from the military, but at this time of year, the military doesn't know much about it. If the game is a step short, if you can't annihilate this nest of war insects on time and accurately, and you can't walk across the battlefield on its ruins, then, the 30,000 people here today are likely to be accounted for here. Su-Ran's eyes were heavy. It's not that he didn't want to take out more turbo laser cannons, but when this kind of thing is not loaded on the battleship, it is actually a ground cannon. Whether it is the function or the operator's hands, Mr. Jang can't let the above turbo laser is put into use. What if two turbo laser cannons couldn't blast that warhive into ruins with all the power? Watching these 30,000 people die, Su-Ran turned her head and looked at the Korean convoy surrounding him. Even at this time, they must desperately protect themselves. Your Excellency Commander. At this time, the turbolaser fired for the third time. The ground trembled violently, the swarms howled loudly, and the roar and flash of the turbolaser cannon shook the entire battlefield. Every time they roared and roared, they could feel that the fighting spirit of the guerrilla warriors had been boosted by 1 point. The battlefield is trembling. Many people can't see so many details, they only see the powerful black technology weapon shocking the insect swarm, and believe that this is their hope of victory. Many fighters and survivors who no longer thought they could leave the sword alive, even had hope rekindled here, but Su-Ran has no way of knowing whether this hope will come true. And at this very moment, the turbo laser cannon fired for the 4th time. The flashes were dazzling, and the earth rumbled and trembled. Chapter 30 Breakdown. The convoy was advancing slowly. If one looked down from a high altitude at this moment, one could see that there was only a line of fire in the black tide formed by the war insects. That was the mixed breakout force from the guerrilla side. As they advanced along the way, as the breakout team got deeper and deeper, the overall stretch became longer and longer, and the tip of the breakout team, as well as the flanks, were all under siege by the swarm. Flames are burning everywhere. Looking down from the dim sky, it's like a gasoline winding on the dark ocean is ignited, and the tortuous line it flows through becomes the burning line of fire on the sea. The turbolaser fired for the 5th time, achieving a breakthrough result. The shield of the Zerg war nest that was less than 700 meters away from the front flickered, and was finally completely defeated in successive attacks. Its entire energy supply system seemed to be malfunctioning due to the interruption of the shield. The plasma cannons that had been trying to bombard the position of the turbo laser cannon all dimmed, and the muzzle was downward, no longer lethal. The guerrilla warriors cheered loudly, and their fighting spirit increased several times in an instant. In the dark night, every warrior's eyes shone with scorching light. That was a flash of hope. The turbo laser cannons are still roaring, the muzzles of the cannons are hot and red, and the billowing steam is rising. The nighttime temperature in Corio in October should have been around 10 degrees, but now, the temperature around the two turbo laser cannons has risen to 100 degrees. It was more than 40 degrees, but none of the operators took the initiative to retreat. The cooling device of the turbo laser cannon runs slowly, and the limited energy will be used to provide more firing opportunities for the laser cannon. With the shield being crushed, the slowly moving war insect nest finally stopped, while the migratory locusts in the sky howled and swooped down, and surrounded their mother nest with black beetles, forming a flesh and blood formation. Steel defenses, however, no matter how fast they responded, under the interception of the high-spirited Corio fighters, they still failed to complete this flesh and blood defense line before the two turbo laser cannons fired for the sixth time. The earth trembled for the sixth time, and the deafening roar was deafening, and a flash of light lit up from a short distance away, and the next moment it penetrated a battlefield and bombarded the insect nest. The ground rumbled and trembled. Suran raised his eyes and saw thick smoke billowing from the direction of the worm nest, but unfortunately, from his position, he could hardly see anything. He could only judge from the return movement of the worm swarm. This round of blows still hasn't crushed the hill-like mobile insect nest, and at this moment, the iron curtain formed by black beetles and migratory locusts took shape, and the turbo laser cannon only had the energy to fire for the last time, but because of the existence of this flesh and blood line of defense, difficult to fire and shoot. But guerrillas warriors were pushing hard under the dark night. The battle line was obviously getting longer and longer, but these Corio fighters fought more and more fiercely. Under the command of Master Zhang, they rushed towards the insect nest like a tide at a distance of 700 meters. I don't know how many people died. The mechanized troops in the front collapsed, and the infantry behind rushed up in the night. Monsters are howling, and humans are also howling. The closer the distance, the more casualties, and the more dangerous the turbo laser cannon. The Black Beetle couldn't tear through the crazy ground defense of the Koreans, and the migratory locust launched a fierce attack from the sky. At this time, there were actually not enough manpower to defend the turbo laser cannon, so Suran led his own people on top to strangle the locusts around the turbo laser cannon. In this way, they were getting closer and closer to the worm nest. The swarm's line of defense was breached, and the ground was full of corpses. At this time, the convoy was completely driving on the road paved with corpses. With a loud bang, a migratory locust was hit head-on and fell from the sky. Suran suppressed the dark thunder god in his hand, and looked up. Every Korean was already insane. In the dark and under the flames, what he saw were pairs of blood-red eyes along the way. I don't know how many people died, several thousand, thousands, but this is at the moment of the expedition. Everyone already understands for 30,000 people, it is impossible for all of them to walk out of Giant City alive. Some people must die before some people can survive. Everyone is prepared to die in battle, because even if only one person left Giant alive, they would still be the winners, because that meant that they were not besieged, and they broke through the encirclement of the swarm. And Suran was also raising his head, and the mother nest of the insect swarm had once again appeared in his field of vision. A bombing just now collapsed half of the mother nest, causing its mountain-like structure to collapse. Through the light of the fire, one could see that there were some maggots that were magnified hundreds of times on the outside of the damaged nest. The creatures are constantly wriggling, and seem to be slowly repairing, and at this very moment, the two turbo laser cannons fired for the last time. This time, Suran was the closest, and his eyes suddenly lit up, and he also felt the airwaves and flashes of the directed energy weapon roaring through the air. At this moment, the position of the two turbo laser cannons can be said to be on the same level as that of the insect nest, so the firing this time is completely forward penetration. Two flashes of light directly hit the bottom of the insect nest, accompanied by earth-shattering loud noises. The outer rocky shell of the insect nest was pierced and torn in an instant. The huge insect nest began to rumble downwards, and a large amount of thick water flowed out of it. The same slurry was flowing wantonly on the ground at this moment. The remaining mechanized troops all turned their muzzles and fired into the nest, intensifying the results of the battle. At the same moment, the commando team organized by Mr. Zhang rushed forward, rushing into it along the huge gap opened by the turbo laser cannon. They blew up the worm nest and stepped over its ruins to complete the last transition and buffer before breaking out with a defeat of this insect nest. The actions of the surrounding black beetles and migratory locusts became slightly sluggish at this moment. Obviously, the combat command network formed by them surrounding Giant was because of this node. There were some faults due to the breakthrough. This allowed the extremely long Giant breakout troops to gather quickly, and all members moved closer to the forefront of the breakout troops. Although the two turbo laser cannons that don't have enough energy are now almost scrap iron, they are still protected by Mr. Zhang. He wants to take these two big killers out of Giant, but the situation did not seem to be as smooth as expected. The first commando team sent by Master Zhang Xianqin, more than 20 people, entered the half-collapsed worm nest ruins for a full minute, but there was still no sound, and they did not even reply to the communication. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 31 Traveling. Chapter 31 Everyone knows what this moment means. As soon as a minute passed, Zhang Xianqin immediately dispatched the second and third assault teams to quickly rush into the remaining insect nests. After jumping over the corpses everywhere and the wreckage of the half-blown insect nests this time, there was a short firing sound from inside, and faintly, some purple, will-o'-the-wisp-like things could be seen dancing in the depths of the ruins. And then, there was a strange sound, and then, under the light of several giant vehicle searchlights, 5 sphere monsters that Su Ran was familiar with burst out of the darkness and ran over the ground. The ruins, tearing the ground, tearing up the corpses all over the ground. Killed the Koryo breakout army that was caught off guard. Seeing these old friends, Su Ran's scalp exploded. This kind of spherical monster is the Zerg attack unit that demolished his destroyer all the way on the northeast plain. Their structure feels very delicate, and it is different from most insects. In the hard body, there are 8 huge metal blades, which are scattered on the surface of its sphere. No matter from which direction the sphere is viewed, there are 2 spiral blades. When these blades rotate by themselves, they also follow the rapid movement of the sphere monster. Turned wildly, the human corpses on the ground were almost torn apart on the spot when it rubbed against them. Even if it was a black beetle, if it was run over by it, it would be torn apart like a praying mantis trampled to death by humans, and blood would overflow. They passed through the ruins and corpses at high speed, and their entire bodies were covered with all kinds of blood, making them look disgusting and hideous. When a guerrilla tank that had already been scarred by the swarm of insects was hit head-on by this thing, the spherical monster cut all the way into the tank, but was engulfed in flames when the high explosive bombs loaded in the tank exploded. This thing has a miraculous effect on warships with low outer defenses in the air, and although its lethality is amazing on a dense battlefield, it is something that can be stopped. After all, the 5 sphere monsters instantly set off a bloody rain of excitement in the breakout team, and the formation that had just barely gathered was instantly crushed, while the black beetles and migratory locusts that had seemed sluggish just now suddenly became flexible at this moment, each of them hissing and howling. Cooperate with the sphere monster to attack the formation of the guerrilla breakout team. From the small victory that defeated the war worm nest to the current reversal, this change has a devastating blow to the battle situation. Even if the commander of the army has been vigilant, ordinary fighters and survivors cannot. At the moment when the worm nest was blown down by the turbo laser cannon, many people were obviously relieved, so facing the counterattack of the worm swarm at this moment, many people seemed panicked. The entire breakout team was in chaos in an instant, and the formation was almost overwhelmed. Zhang Xianqin's eyes were tearing in the command vehicle, and he issued orders one by one, but they were surrounded here, and even if they stabilized their formation, there was almost no way out. Farther away, other war insect nests are slowly moving towards this side. The huge insect nest casts a mountain-like shadow, but faster than them are overwhelming black beetles. Swaying fire and rising in the smoke of gunpowder, it surged like a black wave leaping over the earth. They were bitten by the swarm here. The more they couldn't get in, the more dangerous they were. And at this moment, a soldier reported, "Master," in Korean, "Your Excellency, Commander's convoy is leaving our team and heading straight for the worm's nest." Zhang Xianqin raised his head in surprise. He sent 3 exploration teams just now, each of which had far more people than the previous one. There were a total of more than 120 people. After entering the ruins of the insect nest, there was no sound. Instead, the 5-headed sphere the monster was killed. Zhang Xianqin is not an idiot, he is also an old general for many years. Naturally, it is not difficult to see that the destruction of this insect nest is probably a trap of the insect swarm. They confirmed that they could not resist the turbo laser cannon, So they simply abandoned the worm nest and used it as a trap, step by step, leading snakes out of the hole, trapping all Giant's breakout army to death in the wilderness outside Giant, and because of this, the crushed insect nest is a trap within a trap, and the risk may be even greater, and it is impossible to escape in the command vehicle. An adjutant changed his face and said, Korean language, that's a trap. The ruins of the worm's nest don't know what's real, Commander. If you jump on it at this time, you're throwing yourself into a trap. Zhang Ziyankan gritted his teeth, and said, Korean language, we will follow if we throw ourselves into a trap. We can die, but your excellency, Commander, can't I hear? Have you all seen the power of laser cannons? Our country needs such weapons, our people need such weapons. Your excellency, the commander must be alive. Pass down the order, mobilize the whole army, and follow your excellency commander to charge. But, the adjutant was crying, in Korean, it's already like this outside, how can we charge? Whoever can charge should charge. Zhang Ziyankan said, in Korean, the situation has reached this point, and losses are inevitable. If the first person charges, the second person will charge. In the situation of being trapped, in addition to charging, there are also what can reshape our formation. This is my determination. Charge. In the dark night, amidst the howling of thousands of war insects, the horn of guerrillas charge sounded and echoed for a long time. At the same moment, Su Ran was leading the convoy towards the insect nest that had been knocked down halfway. Although the size of this insect nest is far smaller than that of the ice city, it is still like a hill. Two turbo laser cannons fire 2 salvos to blow up half of it. It can be seen that it is like a huge mountain. Its ruins are the only clearing in the entire battlefield, amid the impenetrable waves of black beetles. Therefore, if you want to get rid of the current situation, you can only fight out from here. The structure of the insect nest has been completely destroyed, a large number of internal tissues and organs are broken, and all kinds of mucus and thick water of unknown purpose are emitting a foul smell, and there are a large number of flashing creatures in it. It is a two-person, multi-legged humanoid creature. When they are in combat, their bodies emit purple fluorescence, and they can emit a voltage of more than 500 volts from their bodies instantly at close range. This level of voltage is enough to electrocute a living person on the spot, but their real function is to build a single electromagnetic shield. They can build a rectangular electromagnetic shield with the same height as themselves. When the insect nest is partially damaged and the shield is offline, they will replace the shield. Realize the true sense of power generation with life. They are the inner guard of the hive. Chapter 32 Tentacle Monster. In the mucus on the ground, in the broken tissues and organs, there are rustling sounds, and a long and narrow creature that looks like a giant leech sticks out from the darkness and shadows, along the ground and the dense forest all over the ground. The water is moving here at high speed, but at this time, Zhu Feng and the others had already opened fire, and the bullets were flying, strangling these monsters. The bodies of these leech creatures are very fragile, and they are incomparable with war insects like the black beetle migratory locust. If they are hit by bullets, they will be beaten to pieces and die tragically on the spot. Therefore, although there are quite a few of them, and a large number of them are hidden in the shadows, they actually pose no threat. In the convoy of Li Rui's awakened team in front, an awakened soldier leaned out from the skylight, carrying a system-produced individual portable missile launcher called Silver Fury. Aim at the purple flash in front of you, and fire a cannon in the air, and not just him. At this moment, above the many runners rushing to the forefront, the skylights open one after another, and the awakened ones carrying rocket launchers launched Z missiles one after another in the darkness. Towering flames rose instantly, and those hive guards were instantly engulfed. If they form a frontal formation, the defensive network formed will be a big trouble, but they themselves are in a scattered state, and under the blow, they will suffer heavy losses. In an instant, flames were burning in the deepest part of the ruins of the insect nest, and Su Ran's runner took the lead, driving at the forefront of the entire convoy in the darkness. A giant spider-like 8-legged creature leaped out like lightning, and was ignited in the air by a fire-controlling awakener. The internal defense system of the insect nest has always been quite weak, especially this small-scale insect nest, and the breakout of the giant guerrilla troops is obviously unexpected by the insect swarm. Even if the insect nest is prepared, it cannot arming such a hive within a short period of time. Therefore, most of the attacks on the convoy are regular internal units of the insect nest, such as the giant leeches, which are actually maintenance workers and construction engineers moving in the insect nest. Su Ran's convoy of runners, like wolves into a flock of sheep, smashed through the broken insect nest all the way, rampaging especially with Su Ran, the arms master. They had enough ammunition, Su-ran couldn't afford the weapons for the entire giant breakout force, but his two teams could still do it. Li Rui had already stepped out of the skylight, covering the dark energy armor. He directly set up a 25mm caliber cannon and fired crazily with a reinforcement provided by the dark energy armor. The guy yelled excitedly for him. This is also a rare insect killing situation. Black beetles and migratory locusts are difficult to kill, but the bugs in these nests can be slaughtered like mowing grass, which made Li Rui feel the pleasure of mowing grass when playing Wushu endgames before, and howled excitedly. The gunshots were deafening. If the runner was not a military tank, it might have been unbearable. At this time, the runner was also fully opening the door, and the two built-in 12.7mm caliber machine guns spit out death flames. The runner convoy is advancing at high speed, all the way deep into the depths of the collapsed brood. Compared with a periphery where a large number of black beetles gather, this is indeed the last life gate. Su-ran had also heard the voices of the Koryo breakout troops gradually catching up behind them. That Mr. Zheng was obviously not his peer, so he immediately followed up decisively. Su-ran took a look at the car radar, which was disabled due to an unknown infection. The only thing he could confirm was that they should have penetrated 2/3 of the insect nest now, and they were about to pass through the wreckage of this huge insect nest. This area is where the hive pro guards at the far end were located, and it is also the area least affected by the laser cannon. Part of the hive structure still exists, and the outer wall of the huge hive extends in the sky like a dome, casting a large shadow. It is a dark place that even the firelight cannot illuminate. But in the carriage, Jin Ziyang's face was a little ugly. As a survivor of the post-apocalyptic era, this is certainly not the first time she has been on the battlefield, but it is the first time she has rushed into the crowd of monsters at the head of a horse, and strictly speaking, they are now rushing into the brood. May I ask, how many people in the world have rushed into the brood and killed them? Jin Ziyang dare not say that he is the number one person in the world, but at least he should be the number one person in Korea. But for some reason, listening to Li Rui's slaughter-like excited battle roar, an extremely powerful roar, and feeling the violent tremors of the runners, she never had the slightest bit of excitement. As the first person in Korea, I even wanted to scream and run out of the car, but at this moment, a high-pitched scream suddenly came from the firelight and shadows all over the place. Jin Ziyang turned his head following the sound, and saw a burst of purple light in the flames and gunpowder smoke. It was an insect nest pro guard protruding from the plasma of insect corpses all over the place, and bumped head-on on a runner. Surged the electric current that Jin Ziyang could see with the naked eye surged on the body of the runner, and in an instant, the car flew out with a loud noise, hitting a ruptured soft tissue organ on the other side. Flames and smoke rose, however, in just 2 breaths or so. In the runner, 4 awakened men wearing dark energy armor immediately tore the body from the wreckage of the runner, and the streamlined armor shone brightly. As if not injured at all, the dark energy armor saved their lives. These awakened ones ran immediately, ready to keep up with the convoy, but at this moment, from the darkness behind them, a long, pipe-like tentacle suddenly rolled up. Its head was extremely sharp, and it was unexpected. The angle is tricky, and it penetrates directly from the weakest head of the dark energy armor worn by one of the awakened ones, and rolls him up into the sky. With the screams that stop abruptly, he is instantly dragged into the endless darkness among. Jin Ziyang couldn't help but exclaimed, and immediately looked at Su-ran, and Su-ran had already noticed this scene. He picked up the intercom and said anxiously, "Scatter the formation," because at this moment, not only the pipe-like tentacles stretched out, but also pipe-like tentacles stretched out in front of, above, and in the left and right directions of the convoy. The 4 awakened ones were caught off guard and were almost strangled on the spot. A runner in the front was even pierced by 3 pipe tentacles, and was directly pulled into the sky, and was torn to pieces in the air. The runner that Su-ran was in had to brake suddenly and barely escaped an attack. Li Rui's machine gun went off and hit a nearby friendly vehicle, instantly turning that runner into a flaming fireball. Chapter 33. Chapter 33. Now Su-ran's convoy has entered the final shadow area. Those pipe tentacles spread from the deepest part of the darkness, dancing in the light and shadow, like the legendary terrifying creatures dormant in the old days. Jin Ziyang looked at the writhing tentacle ghost through the car window, opened his mouth wide, and wanted to scream, but found that he couldn't make any sound. The convoy is rapidly spreading out, avoiding the numerous tentacles strangling frantically. Su-ran's scalp was also numb. What is this thing? Why, there is such a thing in the worm's nest. He doesn't know this is also the first time he has entered the insect nest. Although he has heard of many things in his last life, that's all. After all, his level in the previous life was too low. In short, he was too rubbish, and he could not get access to these relevant information at all. Now that the end of the world has just erupted, and the military has not yet grasped much information about the interior of the insect nest, Su-Ran's only the Sky Mother nest that was destroyed in the front was eaten up by the nano cloud again. Although he had fought with this swarm for a long time, Su-Ran still hadn't figured out what the inside of the worm nest where the worms were strictly defending was like, and at this moment, another runner driven by an awakened person was dragged into the sky there. A fire control awakener with a high level erupted at the moment of death, and the flame rose up like a living thing, along one of the pipe tentacles, spreading all the way to the deepest part of the darkness and shadows. And finally briefly light up the entire dark interior of the hive. At the end of these densely packed tentacles dancing wildly in mid-air is a huge soft tissue organ, the size of a truck, pulsating like breathing in the deepest part of the darkness, and those tentacles are actually a kind of pipe, which seems to be some kind of equipment used to connect the interior of the insect nest. When the insect nest is destroyed, they become lethal weapons. This is not a living thing, but a certain tissue and organ is being controlled by something to become a killing machine. However, this ray of light is fleeting, because the next moment, the smoke and dust of the ignited pipe is sprayed out, and the flame is extinguished. Did you see it? Its main body is that organ. Blow it up. Su-Ran's order was conveyed in an instant. Someone pushed the car door, rolled out of the high-speed runners, and fired twice with a double-barreled rocket launcher. The flames briefly illuminated the darkness, but they were all intercepted by those pipe tentacles. These tentacles were so hard and terrifying that 2 rocket launchers barely managed to blow off one of them, accompanied by a loud noise. The 100-meter-long tentacle was blown off in the center, making a loud noise like a huge stone falling to the ground, and another tentacle swept across from the darkness, instantly swept the soldier carrying the double-barreled bazooka into the air, and disappeared into the darkness with a scream. There are hundreds of tentacles here, and with their protection, it is impossible to hide us at this distance. Li Rui had already retreated into the runner, his face extremely ugly. When Mr. Jiang's troops rush up, they will all be blocked here. At that time, there was no room to move around, and the tentacles swept a large area, and I don't know how many people will die, Su-Ran said in a deep voice. Then rush over to it, and blast it through it in one go at places where these tentacles can't touch and defend. Jin Ziyang's face was pale. Who rushed over? Let's rush over. Su-Ran immediately ordered. Everyone is there, cover my car and move forward. Jin Ziyang really didn't expect that the one who was about to rush forward at this moment turned out to be the commander himself, and his expression changed wildly at this time. Flares were shot out one after another. Although each flare was shot down by the pipe tentacles every time it was lifted into the air, it could still illuminate the dark world for a moment like lightning, and Su-Ran's convoy moved forward alternately amidst the flashes that flickered again and again, and gradually separated, attracting the attention of the pipe tentacles, covering Su-Ran's runners all the way forward, reaching directly under the huge organ. This scene was like a pack of wolves running across the dark field of lightning. Su-Ran turned her head and saw runner breathing out death flames, was swept by the tentacles, rolled and flew out, and turned into a huge fireball rolling on the ground during the martyrdom explosion. And at this moment, the huge soft tissue organ located at the core of many pipe tentacles has appeared in front of him. The thing was as big as a truck, and the outer layer was a huge opaque film-like substance, breathing and pulsating as if it were alive. Li Rui leaned out half of his body from the car window, carrying Silver Fury, and blasted out. The captain of the Awakened leaned back slightly under the huge recoil, but his eyes reflected the flashes of missiles flying by at this distance and at this position. It is already a dead end for the pipeline tentacles to return to defense. Those tentacles dancing wildly in the shadows and flames have no time to return to defense. Therefore, this missile did not encounter any obstacles, and it only took in 2 seconds. It hit the tissue about 200 meters away. The violence of science and technology tore apart the tissue in an instant. The flames rose and spread, and a large amount of thick yellow slurry gushed out. Li Rui immediately retreated into the runner to avoid the impact. The pipe tentacles dancing in the shadows suddenly lost their life at this moment, and fell from the sky with a loud noise. The runners and human fighters on the ground hurriedly avoided to avoid the tragedy of being smashed to death. The entire earth trembled, as if an ancient giant beast had crashed to the ground. At this moment, Su-Ran heard a sharp hiss. It was a sound unlike any war bug he had ever seen. Su-Ran turned her head in astonishment, and saw a black lightning flashing towards the ground at an incredible speed. In the last tissue of the worm nest that was engulfed by the flames, the horrific omen of death surged up. Su-Ran hissed and roared, "Quick back!" The awakened driver, who reacted very quickly, reversed the car immediately, but it was still a step too late. The black shadow had already rushed to the front, and the huge scythe-like blade cut down. There was a loud shattering sound, accompanied by the sound of flesh and blood being torn apart. The runner in reverse was suddenly torn apart. The driver's seat and the awakened driver on it were cut open on the spot, and the rear end of the runner was exerting a violent force. It went up with force, and immediately hit the ground with a bang. Parts collapsed and flew. Half of the car body from the driver's seat to the front engine was cut off. The driver's flesh and blood was cut into two pieces, and blood flowed like a spring in the fragmented compartment. In the darkness, Leroy drew out his gun and fired. The flashes of bullets illuminated the figure of the terrifying creature. It is a praying mantis-like creature, more than 5 meters tall, with 32 cold eyes. It is indifferently overlooking the human beings who are close at hand. P.S. Push a friend for a book. Nightmare Dominator. This book is an infinite flow of sand sculpture supernatural. Everyone can support it, bookmark it, vote for it. He is worse than me. Chapter 34 Dark Energy. The bullets in the pistol ran out quickly. The 9mm bullet hit this praying mantis-like creature without leaving even a crater, and all of them were blown away directly. Leroy raised his head and looked at this praying mantis-like monster so close at hand. His expression changed wildly. Neither in the records of the fleet nor in the records of the Huaxia military, there is no introduction of creatures related to this, but just now, the speed and explosive power displayed by this thing are already amazing enough. Its body is streamlined, and its outer shell is silver and green, like armor that grows naturally. It has 4 arms, 2 huge side-like feet on the outside, and 2 on the inside that resemble the hands of the human arm, but there are only 3 fingers on them, and the 4 strong hind feet are firmly on the ground. On the head, 32 eyes are shining coldly behind it. The flames rose, reflecting its perfect and powerful body, like a biological killer coming out of a science fiction movie. Leroy's bullets ran out in an instant, and this praying mantis-like monster instantly raised its sickle-like blade feet, and was about to cut it down from the sky. Leroy's face changed suddenly. He no longer had a weapon in his hand. He was about to raise his hand to block at this moment, and a layer of metallic luster appeared on his arm instantly. That's exactly his ability, to strengthen the body. Leroy is a 4th-level awakened person. Although his ability is not as amazing as the ability to control fire and freeze, it is a real combat ability. He can stimulate dark energy, instantly strengthen his body, and transform his body. The strength of the body has been raised to a superhuman strength, but facing the blade that cut off the entire runner like tofu in an instant, Leroy didn't have full confidence to resist. However, at this moment, there was a deafening loud noise from the side, and the light flashed. The praying mantis-like creature was thrown out instantly as if it had been hit hard. It flew more than 10 meters away and hit the ground. Leroy turned his head and saw Suran tearing apart the twisted and collapsed runner's roof with one hand, the Dark Thor with the other hand, and the dark energy hunting gun in the form of a cannon with the other hand. The mantis-like monster over there fell to the ground. Suran, he had already jumped off the twisted and deformed runner ruins, fired all the way, and within 2 breaths, the hand cannon's 6 bullets were exhausted. The buzzing sound vibrated in the field. A heavy blow set off a large cloud of smoke and dust on the ground, and under the cover of the distant fire, it curled up like a ghost. Suran unloaded the hand cannon, turned the Dark Thunder God, and slowly opened the distance back. You stay in the car. Leroy reassured Jin Suhang, and jumped off the runner with his silver anger on his shoulders, rushed to the smoke over there, set up the missile launcher. His face was serious, and he was fully prepared with this is the deepest part of the crushed insect nest, and there is still a large shadow cast by the undisintegrated dome above it. Turn on and off the light source. There was silence in the arena. Suran is not ready to take any risks regardless of whether the monster was dead or not. He would not look forward. Delaying time would be beneficial to him. Zhu Feng was leading people towards them at high speed, and behind them, the breakout troops from the Koryo side were also heading towards this direction. No matter how many black beetles and migratory locusts there are outside, but here, this monster is alone and helpless. The longer it drags on, the faster it will die. So Suran and Leroy were slowly retreating at this moment. They were waiting for others to catch up and beat up this Zerg creature that they had never seen before. Unlike Leroy, Suran vaguely guessed that this praying mantis-like monster might be the actual controller of this mobile war worm nest, the so-called brain or mother worm. And at this moment, a sharp scream sounded from the smoke and dust. Immediately afterwards, there was a crackling sound that tore through the air. Judging from the sound, Suran instantly judged that it was aimed at him. Suran immediately settled down, clenched the Dark Thor in his hand, and waited for the other party to come out and give it a headshot. However, a breathing time passed, but nothing came out from the front. That thing, Suran raised her head like lightning, and saw a silver-green icy shadow flashing out of the darkness directly above her head, and she could only see clearly when the distance was extremely close. It was the one just now, a praying mantis-like creature. In just a split second, it had already culled in front of Su-Ran, like the most experienced hunter, sweeping out its strong sickle-like legs in an instant. Su-Ran could only roll over on the ground and get out of the way for the first time. When he raised his head, the mantis-like monster had already come to him like a ghost. The side that was raised, two saber legs, one for vertical chopping and the other for sweeping down. There is no hiding. Either it was split into two pieces from top to bottom, or it was cut into two pieces lazily. Both of these possible outcomes lead undoubtedly to death. Su-Ran's expression changed instantly, but at this moment, he was surprisingly calm. The more this is the case, the more meaningless it is to panic. Countless countermeasures quickly flashed through his mind. Take out the gravity generator and crush this praying mantis monster. No, the gravity generator produced by the system is based on the gravity of the current planet, up to 15 times. With the fighting power shown by this praying mantis monster, 15 times the gravity of the Earth may not be able to crush it. Take out a high explosive grenade and detonate it in the air. No, it was too late. I took out the high explosive grenade myself, and before it detonated, my body had already been severed. So, what else? Dark energy. Su-Ran only thought of this unreliable possibility. His dark energy actually doesn't have any fighting power. Although he has a perception ability as high as 17, Su-Ran has never developed any application method, but that doesn't mean his seventh perception is unusable. He couldn't spit out flames and freeze ice like others, and he couldn't use dark energy manipulation to achieve telekinetic effects, or even crush a high-speed car like a 5 or 6 level awakener. But he can do the simplest application. For example, make things float. Li Rui at the far end roared, extremely anxious and worried, while Jin Suhaing looked at this side. He also covered his mouth in shock, thinking that the commander may be in danger at this moment. Facing the double attack from top to bottom, Su-Ran did not dodge or evade. Instead, he stretched out his arms and spread his palms towards the praying mantis-like monster that was close at hand. In the darkness, and invisible forces gushing forth, all the movements of that mantis-like creature froze at this moment. Chapter 35. U0026LT, RU0026GT, the sweeping knife foot stagnated in midair, and the vertical knife foot also stagnated in midair. Immediately afterwards, the body of the praying mantis-like creature began to float upwards, as if it was swallowed by some invisible bubble and got rid of the ground. General gravity U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT, its 32 eyes reflected the human figure that was close at hand, showing a very obvious expression that was almost horrified. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT, Li Rui, who was in the distance, looked at this scene and shouted excitedly, "That's right. The commander is an awakened person with 17th level perception. Ha ha ha. It's courting death to fight our commander-in-chief one-on-one. U0026LT, RU003 EU0026LT, RU0026GT, there is no so-called awakened person research in Korea, and Jin Zhiang has almost zero understanding of this level system, but at this time he still let out a long breath. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. At this time, Su-Ran raised his Dark Thunder God, aimed at the head of this mantis-like monster, and shot it close, directly piercing it. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. But what is surprising is that the head of this thing was pierced, and one eye was smashed out, but it still did not die. While controlling it with dark energy, Su-Ran could also feel the powerful power from the other side. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. The other party was struggling crazily in the quagmire formed by dark energy, and even Su-Ran had a feeling that he couldn't control it. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Su-Ran could even see brains flowing out of its head. How could it be still alive? U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. It may have an accessory brain, U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Su Ran took a deep breath and pushed her hands forward. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. In an instant, the body of the praying mantis-like monster, which was constantly confronting Su Ran, flew back more than 20 meters. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. As the distance increased, Su Ran could clearly feel that his control over the opponent also weakened, and the opponent's knife foot vibrated a little. Obviously, Su Ran couldn't control it for a long time. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Su Ran shouted with some difficulty, "Li Rui! Fire! U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT." Li Rui, the leader of the awakened team, only reacted at this time. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Su Ran's miraculous attack made Li Rui overly excited. He felt that his hidden commander should be able to crush this praying mantis monster with one hand. It wasn't until Su Ran opened his mouth that he immediately adjusted himself. In the direction of the Argent Fury missile launcher, aim at the praying mantis creature over there, and pull the trigger directly. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. There was a loud noise, and a huge and bright fireball rose in the space. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. That praying mantis-like monster was blown to pieces in an instant, and it couldn't die anymore. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Su Ran's mental pressure was suddenly relieved, but he was almost blown away by the shock wave. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. He took a breath of the scorching air. The strength of this monster was frighteningly strong. He couldn't even suppress him. Fortunately, no matter how skilled he is still afraid of missiles. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. In front of hot weapons, there's nothing but scum. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Su Ran adjusted her breathing a little, then walked towards Li Rui. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Li Rui was so excited that he put Silver Wrath behind his back. "I almost forgot that you are an awakener, Commander. You are so handsome. You are worthy of being a level 17 dark energy perceiver." U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Su Ran squinted at him, and said, "If you don't remind me, I almost forgot that I have a level 17 dark energy perception. But the fact that the actual level of dark energy manipulation is extremely low." U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Li Rui's smile became a little embarrassed. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. On the other side, Jin's Haiyang was also coming out of the mess of runners, standing a little behind, hesitant to speak, and finally said nothing, just standing in the corner with his hands down. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. At this time, Zhu Feng had also rushed over with his hands. One after another runners with high beams approached quickly. Sporadic gunshots sounded. There were still many dormant creatures in the darkness and shadows. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. But following Zhu Feng and the others were even brighter lights U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. The giant breakout force headed by Jiang Xianqin has also caught up step by step, passing through the inner passage of the insect nest opened by Su Ran unimpeded, all the way to here U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Su Ran took Jin Xiang directly onto Zhu Feng's runner, and heard Zhu Feng say, "The communication with Mr. Jiang was restored just now, and he said that the insect swarms outside have gone crazy and are rushing in here like crazy. We must soon use U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT." Su Ran glanced at the wreckage of the mantis-like creature that had been blown into corpses in the distance, and looked thoughtful, before responding immediately, "Okay, let's go immediately. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Su Ran also lost a lot here. The convoy lost nearly half of its manpower, but at this time, they couldn't take care of that much anymore. With Jiang Xianqin's Koryo breakout troops following up, Su Ran and the others also merged into the torrent again, moving forward. Advance U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. In the worm nest, the last living force has been defeated by Su Ran, and now it is a completely unimpeded area, but the worms are blocked by the outer wall of the original worm nest and it is difficult to break in, which gives Su Ran and the others a lot of buffer time. All the way across the insect nest, came under the inner wall of the opposite insect nest. Jiang Xianqin immediately arranged for manpower to blast U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Amidst the loud noise, the insect nest was blasted from the relatively weak interior, and the black beetles that had been waiting for a long time outside rushed in. However, this is already the edge of the entire blockade, and a large number of black beetles have not yet been mobilized. Here, although there are quite a few black beetles, it is difficult to form a comprehensive blockade. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. After paying a certain price, Su Ran and the others finally broke out and successfully left the swarm of sword morality behind. Although there were still many pursuers, they were still out of danger. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Guerrilla suffered heavy losses. They had more than 30,000 people when they broke through the siege. However, now, Master Jiang has only a few more than 5,000 people left with a regular army and survivors. Many people who do not have combat effectiveness and the support personnel all died in the battle. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. However, for Jiang Xianqin, who was originally determined to die, the current situation is quite good. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. The convoy is still going on the land of the Koryo Peninsula. For a long time to come, Jiang Xianqin's army will be the target of the swarm. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Master Jiang talked to Su Ran from his command vehicle through the communication equipment, and Jin Xiang translated U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Jiang Xianqin's meaning was very clear. He was going to send a troop to escort Su Ran to their secret arsenal, where Su Ran would unload the remaining 28 double laser cannons, while he continued to entangle with the swarm with the troop. Work hard for the great cause of liberating the Koryo Peninsula. U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. After seeing Su Ran take away all Giant's resources in one go, he is very sure that Su Ran has a space to store equipment, and the turbo laser cannon promised to them is in a U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. At the same time, Zheng Xianqin also expressed his gratitude, saying, "It is my greatest honor to be able to fight side by side with your Excellency Commander, U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. Su Ran was a little ashamed of what he said, but he nodded in agreement. But it would take some time to deliver the 28 turbo laser cannons U0026LT, RU0026GT, U0026LT, RU0026GT. After all, they will have to be built slowly, not to mention that Su Ran has already occupied a manufacturing channel to build the most expensive warship under the 4th level list U0026LT, RU0026GT, 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 U0026LT, RU0026GT. Chapter 36 The Situation in Xinjiang. After separating from Zheng Xianqin's department, Su Ran went directly to the rear of Korea. The Koreans along the way gave a lot of help, and they all seemed very polite. Although Su Ran didn't bring many people with him on this trip, everyone knew that his fleet was in the adjacent Xinjiang Special Zone. Whoever dares to be presumptuous is challenging a huge fleet. What's more, the deeds of Su Ran and the giant defenders all the way out of the siege have been spread among the Koryo army. Many Koryo soldiers are in awe of Su Ran, let alone offend at the same time. The turbo laser cannon is also being manufactured intensively. It is only a matter of time before 28 turbo laser cannons are delivered. Of course, what Su Ran cared about was the 4th tier warships. Name: Battleship Yuncheng. Description: Yuncheng has a total length of 1,837 meters, a width of 573 meters, and a height of 407 meters. It has a super powerful heavy-duty particle cannon main gun, equipped with 4 double-linked turbo laser cannons, 2 superconducting electromagnetic guns, and 4 triple-installed guns. 380mm caliber kinetic artillery emplacement, 12 30mm caliber built-in short-range guns, 12 short-range built-in explosive energy rapid-fire guns, 4 sets of multifunctional 8-8 vertical missile launch arrays, 2 A-door torpedo launch system, equipped with an ion-driven engine. The limit speed can reach 50,000 km per hour, and equipped with a short-distance jump device. Cost: 200,000 resource points. Time consuming: 288 hours. At the moment when Su Ran got the resources in Giant, Su Ran began to invest in the manufacture of this giant ship. This will be the first real interstellar-class warship he owns, within the scope of the Earth. Neither its speed nor the main gun of the particle beam can exert its full strength, but once this behemoth is manufactured, it will also mean that Su Ran will officially enter the state of I can hit me if I can't be hit, but I can run if I can't be hit. Has the ability of interstellar navigation in a true sense. Of course, Su Ran didn't want to sail away. Although Su Ran has never stepped out of the Earth, judging from the words of the spore life and the invasion of the swarm, this galaxy obviously does not have the so-called absolute justice and evil like in the movie Star Wars. Race and interests are everything. The homeland is here. In the future, Su Ran will step into the Sea of Stars, but at that time, he will be the Earth and the human fleet, not a lost dog driven out of the Earth by aliens in order to speed up the time for the Koreans to drive out the equipment they want. Except for Su Ran's super warships under the 4th level list, which have entered the manufacturing process, his gunboats and attack aircraft have not yet started manufacturing. The other manufacturing channels of the system are now rushing to manufacture turbo laser guns for Korea. In the bottom of my heart, Su Ran also hoped that Korea could hold on. Now Koryo is the only gateway to Xinjiang Special Zone. If it is defeated here, Su Ran's Xinjiang Special Zone will really be in an urn. After the first Battle of Giant, Su Ran stayed in Korea for another 5 days before turning back. Along the way, crossing Changbei Mountain, and returning to Xinjiang Special Zone of course. All of this was done in secret when Su Ran returned to his office in the former Xinjiang airport. Almost no one knew when he came back, and he only notified a few people, but many people have noticed that Su Ran has been away from Xinjiang for a long time. Yuan Lichen was one of those few people. After receiving the message from Su Ran, the current adjutant of the fleet rushed out of his office immediately, and strode forward under the surprised eyes of everyone, didn't even take the elevator that had been restored and put into use, and climbed the stairs all the way to the floor where Su Ran was. The staff along the way talked a lot. Isn't that Adjutant Yuan? Why is he in such a hurry? Yes, I remember that he has always been the most calm, elegant and confident person. What the hell happened to make him lose his composure? Therefore, less than 2 minutes after Su Ran sent Yuan Licheng a message, Yuan Licheng stood in his office with an ugly expression on his face. You still know to come back, cough. Why are you talking like a little girl who was abandoned? Yuan Licheng sighed, opened his chair and sat down opposite Su Ran, and said, how much pressure do I have when you leave without a word? And the most important thing is, it's fine if you come back in 2 or 3 days. It's been 8 days since I left, and it's October 23rd. If you don't come back, I'll think that the Korean woman gave you some kind of ecstasy soup and made you stay there. Su Ran said, do you think I'm the kind of person who will be tempted by women? The situation in Korea is really not good. When I went there, I didn't expect to stay there for such a long time. But you also know that Korea is our last portal to the outside world, is not only our resource channel, but also our natural line of defense. Moreover, it's not that I didn't inform you when I was about to leave, it's because you didn't know where you went. To be honest, Su Ran had known Yuan Licheng for a long time, and it was the first time that he saw Yuan Licheng acting recklessly, so Su Ran was still a little ashamed. Yuan Licheng sighed, and said, of course I know the importance of the Korea Peninsula to the Xinjiang Special Zone. But you have been away for too long, and now half of Xinjiang knows that you are not at home. Although Su Ran had anticipated this, he did not expect such an exaggeration. He said, is this a bit exaggerated? It's not an exaggeration. Yuan Licheng shook his head and said, because just 4 days ago, there was a sudden change in the Fugalo and the more and more assembled insect swarms that were parked over Liao province. They moved forward collectively. 15 kilometers, we have crossed the safety line, and now we are stuck on the line defined by our peace agreement. What are they going to do? Su Ran vaguely guessed the reason why the swarm did this, but still asked. I contacted the military with Spore Life. Let them send a special envoy to talk. The swarm claimed that you appeared on the Korean Peninsula and provided military assistance to the Korean Peninsula. They think you have broken the treaty. Yuan Licheng said, in the past 2 days, the Xinjiang Special Zone has exploded over this matter, so when you are not at home, it is almost impossible to hide it. Su Ran was very calm. However, until today, the swarm has not crossed the threshold. Right, that's right. They are still very afraid of us. But in recent days, the mobilization of insect swarms in eastern Mongolia and Liao province has become more intensive. The number of war insects gathered in Liao province is said to have exceeded 700,000, and there are many powerful war insects among them. Now the access roads between Hebei, Kyoto and Liao province have been completely cut off, and the survivors in Liao province and those who can withdraw from the military have basically withdrawn. That is to say, the exchange of materials and personnel between us and China has been completely interrupted. Chapter 37. I am preparing for a big battle. 700,000. Su Ran's eyes sank when he heard the number. This is just the swarms gathered in Liao province. If you add the swarms gathered in East Mengdong and Longjiang, the total number of swarms will even decrease. Breakthrough 1.5 million, and this 1.5 million is not just talking about basic swarm combat units such as black beetles, migratory locusts, or even slaughterers. There are many aggressive giant threats such as devourers, howlers, and sky patrollers, battlebugs. What's more, it also includes giant insect nests. Undoubtedly, the swarm is also accumulating strength. There is only one purpose for large-scale deployment in Chenbing, that is, on the day when the agreed peace deadline arrives. If Su Ran's fleet does not travel far into the starry sky, then the swarm will sweep across the entire Xinjiang Special Zone and eliminate threats as much as possible. This time is already the limit of the swarm's patience, and next time, they may really tear up the treaty and launch an attack on the Xinjiang Special Zone. Moreover, they didn't seem to have really judged whether Su Ran had helped Gali, so they would not act rashly. Although the Sky Brood had recorded Su Ran before, the Sky Brood had been trapped after that, and was directly destroyed by Su Ran in the enclosed area. Therefore, even if Su Ran faced a suspected female insect in Koryo, mantis-like creatures will not worry about being recognized by the swarm, let alone become a handle in the hands of the swarm. According to the information given by the capital, the Zerg are still dispatching troops from various places. Yuan Licheng said, what they want to guarantee is that if we fail to fulfill the agreement, the troops they hoard around us are enough to destroy us. Swallow the entire Xinjiang special zone in one go? At this point, Yuan Licheng paused slightly, and said, however, there should be no need to worry about this for the time being. The insect swarm will not go overboard yet, at most it is a military threat. Su Ran nodded and said, well, there are still 2.5 days before the deadline. How the swarms gather should indeed be considered now, but it is not the most urgent issue. And now that I have returned from Koryo, even in the Xinjiang special zone some people know that I left before, and there is no time to do anything else now. How about the spore life? They are very honest and cooperative. Yuan Licheng said, but I think they are too honest. These words reached Su Ran's heart. He nodded slightly, and said, that's right. They are too honest. After the Xinjiang war, I promised to give them a destroyer, but a destroyer can really satisfy them, is it? Although they also contacted the military and asked for many large animals as entities to possess and expand the race, but, as you said, they behaved too honestly. The performance in the Skybrood War was a bit out of place. This may be because the thought protection shield you introduced was put into use, making them helpless. After all, when we launched the thought protection shield, they were extremely shocked. Yuan Licheng analyzed and said immediately, but I always feel that they should have other plans. And this time too, about 3 days ago, they should have confirmed the news that you were not in Xinjiang, but they did not take any other actions. Instead, they cooperated to help us renegotiate with the swarm and stabilize those worms. What Yuan Licheng said about the Sui shield is true. Su Ran put the Sui shield into use. When he first appeared in front of the spore life, he really surprised the spore life. The alien bereaved lug, who is in a very similar situation, gave a much higher evaluation, feeling that Su Ran's level of technology was more comprehensive than they estimated. Su Ran liked this idea. After all, the spore life is the real alien lug, while Su Ran is a fake. It belongs to the kind where a bottle is less than half a bottle dangling. Favorable and dominant position. I don't think it's because they must have other plans. Su Ran affirmed, these collective life forms are a group of arrogant and arrogant lunatics. You need to step up your manpower to investigate them. Okay. However, it is still difficult to investigate them. After all, life forms are different, and what can be used against humans is useless against them. At this point, Yuan Licheng said jokingly, if you consent it's enough for people to break into them. Su Ran could only shake his head. He also had such an idea, but this is not human beings planting spies among humans to spy on each other. The life forms on both sides are different, and the spies will reveal their secrets once they enter afterwards. Su Ran and Yuan Licheng had a brief conversation, roughly talking about the recent military movements, before Su Ran got to the point and said, I said, Lao Yuan, should you have anything else to think about? Want to talk to me? Yuan Licheng smiled slightly. Sure enough, I can't hide it from you. Although I didn't come back from the new capital, I also noticed that the headquarters is full of swords, and many fighter planes and weapons are in the warm-up state. And, although you are the first person I saw, a lot of news has already spread. They came to my place. Su Ran smiled slightly and said, and many of them are complaining to you. Su Ran leaned back on the armchair and looked at Yuan Licheng in front of him with some inscrutable. Su Ran's control over the fleet is still unparalleled. Among other things, as soon as he came back, the captains of all positions reported to him through the internal channel immediately, especially Zhang Jianguo, Li Yilin and others who had been ordered by Su Ran to report the situation immediately. These are all people who have been with Su Ran for a long time, and they fought bloody battles with Su Ran all the way. Su Ran treated them favorably, and of course gained absolute trust and loyalty. Yuan Licheng straightened his expression, and said, I do have a big move, and I'm preparing for a big battle. Su Ran's eyes narrowed slightly, and she didn't speak, but waited for the other party to continue. Yuan Licheng said, when you left that day, didn't you find me? I went to see Hoshino Junksha. She took the initiative to ask me out and met in the new capital. She told me a secret. She is the representative of Japan, but she has another identity. She is a spy placed in Japan by the Holy Inquisition of the U.S. military. Su Ran's pupils shrank slightly. Is she from the Holy Order? That's right. The United States is behind the Holy Order. They are a special organization involving the 51st District and a global control plan. Before the end of the world, the Holy Order has already begun to spread around the world, but it exists as a secret small party, relying on the spaceship technology captured by the United States on the moon as bait, attracting a large number of members to join. The invasion of the swarm became an opportunity for them to surface. Because of this, after the end of the world, with the support of the United States, they will rise rapidly. Yuan Licheng exhaled and said, "The Holy Inquisition has become a global religious organization. Many agents and spies from the former CIA of the United States also have been incorporated into it. Hoshino Junxia is such an international spy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 38 City Annihilation Canon. Hearing that Junxia Hoshino was actually a spy, Su Ran was a little surprised, but that's all. In this way, it can be made clear that Junxia Hoshino knows the reason why the United States has acquired so many blasters from the moon to the spacecraft. This Dongying girl is originally from the United States, but she is only using American information on behalf of Dongying to deceive her trust. If Su Ran is still a small office worker in the past, maybe he was really fooled around, but after so much experience, he will not blindly believe in such things that are both true and false, let alone rely on what others give information to make an absolute judgment. Therefore, Su Ran just nodded and said, "She is a spy sent by the Holy Inquisition to Dongpu. What does this have to do with your plan?" Having said that, Su Ran paused for a moment, and asked, "And, since that's the case, why didn't she tell me about this matter? Instead she told you. When she talked to me before, she didn't mention her at all. This heavy identity, on the contrary, she still wants to represent Japan to plot against the United States. Then she seems to have made the wrong idea." Yuan Licheng flattered me without any trace, and said, "As for why she didn't tell you this, but chose to tell me, it's because she wants to instigate me." When he said these words, Yuan Licheng's expression was calm. He paused slightly, observed Su Ran's expression, and after receiving no effective feedback, he continued, "However, she doesn't know that I am our fleet and our loyalty to China. This is another show of loyalty. This is where Yuan Licheng's cleverness lies. Whether he flatters or expresses his loyalty, he either does not show any traces or speaks out openly. Even if Su Ran sees it thoroughly, Su Ran will not feel bored, and even will be happy too. This is how people are. Even if you know that people are complimenting you and saying what you like to hear, and you see it very clearly, you will still feel happy because of the beautiful things they say. Of course, the premise is that Yuan Licheng really did not defect. Moreover, what Su Ran noticed was that there was another temptation in Yuan Licheng's words. He deliberately said, "Huaxa's loyalty. Is this still testing whether I am a human being or not?" Su Ran snorted in his heart, and deliberately said something ambiguous. "Huaxa's position is unclear now. I am an alien." Sure enough, Yuan Licheng's face changed slightly when he heard the words. But he didn't continue to talk about this topic, but said, "It's true Huaxa is very ambiguous, but Hoshino Junxia's attitude is very clear. After she failed to test you, she decided to instigate me against me, let me kill you, and took the fleet to the United States." At this time, Su Ran showed a thoughtful look. Junxia Hoshino failed to test herself. It seems that when Junxia Hoshino was discussing with himself on behalf of Dongying to snatch the American production line, the other party was already testing. If Su Ran is interested in explosive weapons and robot production lines and agrees to Dongying's robbery plan, then Hoshino Junxia should immediately change his rhetoric, show his identity, and renegotiate on behalf of the United States with Su Ran, and directly use the two production lines to buy Su. However, Japan's fleet will be excluded. It's a pity that at that time, Su Ran's look of contempt made Hoshino Junxia return home without even a chance to persuade him. These were unexpected by Su Ran. He couldn't help but feel a little ashamed. Is this an operation like, "I gave you a chance, but you don't even know where the chance is, so I have no choice but to kill you"? Su Ran was in a daze for a moment, then came back to her senses, glanced at Yuan Licheng who was opposite, and said directly, "Go ahead. What price will she offer you?" Yuan Licheng smiled slightly and said, "The United States is looking at this fleet. From their point of view, if they can get rid of you, the former commander, and get me, it will undoubtedly greatly weaken the cohesion of the fleet, and it will be more conducive to their control. I can easily become their puppet. Of course, this is my own judgment. Hoshino Junksha didn't tell me so much, he just promised me a bright future, and with the United States, I will become the most powerful person on Earth. Admiral of a mighty fleet, and the most important thing is that they promised me a city-killing cannon. Cannon? Su Ran frowned. That's right. Yuan Licheng said. Hoshino Junksha said that he would give me a gift, which is a city-killing cannon. It is said to be a heavy-duty plasma weapon. The parameters she gave me are not accurate enough, but what can be confirmed is that this weapon is capable of destroying any warship in our fleet with one shot, even the hive of the swarm and Vigalo. This time it was time for Su Ran to be surprised if this kind of city-killing cannon exists. Its power can already be compared to the particle beam main gun of the Yuncheng that he is building and costs 200,000 resource points. Perhaps its power is still higher than the main gun of the Yuncheng. Su Ran immediately said, Lao Mei has such a thing. After making a comparative analysis in his mind, Su Ran's first reaction was that it was impossible if Lao Mei had such a thing. The Zerg integrated battleship would have fired when it invaded the Earth from space. Not to mention blowing up the Zerg integrated battleship, it could also poke several holes. It blew up and fell apart, so why wait until now, and give it to others as a gift? Just letting others do this operation is not something that the old beauty in Su Ran's impression can do. That's right. When I first heard the news, I also felt fooled, because the power of the city-killing cannon that Junksha Hoshino said is far more powerful than the strongest weapon we have, our molten nano-cloud. Although it can also achieve annihilation effect, it is obviously not as efficient as its damage, and there are many constraints. Yuan Licheng didn't know the existence of the Yuncheng, and these judgments were only made based on the Destroyer and the Enlightenment, but this cannon does exist, but it is not in the hands of Lao Mei, but in the hands of the Dongying people. Su Ran took a deep breath. How is this possible? The Japanese devils have such a trump card? It's not realistic at all. That's not right. So what Hoshino Junksha means is that she gave us this cannon to destroy the city by ourselves. Go to Japan to get it? That's right. Yuan Licheng said. Hoshino Junksha said that this cannon came from a fallen battleship under Kyushu Island. It is said that the battleship of the ancestors of Dongying for thousands of years is not Dongying's own technology. And the United States, on the other hand, hopes to take this opportunity to let us figure out what the Japanese fallen battleship is, and if we fight it, we can kill two birds with one stone. Chapter 39. At that time, I will kill you and snatch their city annihilation cannon from the Dongying people. I will definitely offend China and Dongying, and even pay a certain loss. When the time comes, I will reorganize it into the United States. They only need to operate a little bit. This fleet will become their possession. Yuan Licheng spoke very quickly. On the surface, this invitation is to be attractive. Whether it is becoming the leader of the fleet or being able to obtain a city-destroying cannon weapon whose technology is far superior to that of the fleet, and the various conditions offered by Junksha Hoshino on behalf of the United States are irresistible temptations, but you refused. Su Ran looked at the other party with a smile, and he felt that this guy was going to flatter him again to show his loyalty, but this time Su Ran seemed to be wrong. Yuan Licheng looked at Su Ran in front of him with burning eyes, and said slowly, yes, if it was in the past, I would not be able to refuse any of these conditions, even if there are risks as great as opportunities. But, Your Excellency, Commander, do you still remember? 2 months ago, after the Sky Brood War, you said something to me. Su Ran frowned slightly, thoughtfully. That's, our journey is the sea of stars. Yuan Licheng slowly spit out these words. The starry sky is on the other side. Why should I be with a group of short-sighted people who are restricting human beings? Su Ran was slightly stunned whether it's flattering or showing loyalty. Su Ran just heard it, but he realized that what Yuan Licheng said now seems to be his real thoughts, and Yuan Licheng also seemed to realize that he was a little out of control, and quickly smiled, and returned to that gentle look, and said with a smile, of course, no matter what the stars and the sea, our problem now is the swarm. The swarm, if it is not resolved, the journey will only be limited to this place. Su Ran also nodded. What do you think about this? Go. Yuan Licheng replied almost without thinking, that cannon is at least a destructive weapon. Even if it can't be installed on our warships, it can be placed in Xinjiang fixed forts. We will be able to use them one day. Moreover, although the Dongying woman categorically claimed that it was the weapon of their ancestors, it is unknown whether there were humans on the island 10,000 years ago. They are too. It's familiar, so I think it may be an unknown spaceship that crashed under Kyushu Island. Like the spore life, it may be a lost dog, and there are still living things inside. and the Dongyin people may be deceived. Su Ran also had the same idea human beings 10,000 years ago. This is not impossible from a logical point of view. The earliest Homo sapiens was born at least 30,000 years ago, and many people in the evolutionist school believe that human beings evolved step by step from apes. But that being the case, why don't monkeys or orangutans turn into humans and come out of the forest now? It's not that Su Ran doesn't believe that there is an ancient top-level civilization on the earth and human beings, but if there is, it should have been completely destroyed long ago. Otherwise, how can human beings be bullied by the swarm? Su Ran said. How does America judge? Hoshino Junxia doesn't say much about this point. Yuan Licheng said, but the general idea should be similar to our judgment. The Dongyin people should recognize the thief as their ancestor. The unknown spaceship under Kyushu Island is very likely. It is another alien creature that fell on the earth. But this actually needs to be confirmed by you. Su Ran immediately reacted and said, you mean the Huaxia military's empty plan? That's right. I think the content of the Hollow Project may help us determine what is under Kyushu Island. Yuan Licheng said, however, even if it is really an unknown spaceship of another civilization under Kyushu Island, then it should also be in a very bad state now. Otherwise we don't need to pretend to be the ancestors of the Japanese people and rely on humans to help it. Therefore, if we can confirm this, we'd better go to the fleet immediately and kill it in its cradle here. We must turn this spaceship that may be more advanced than ours into our spoils of war at that time. We will live in Dongpu, and we will have the opportunity to command the world and realize the great cause of attacking the Pacific Brood. Command the world peace orders are unrealistic, and forceful suppression is more or less the same. Su Ran shook his head slightly. On this point, Yuan Licheng was still a little naive, but he didn't point it out, but said, co-author, are you waiting for me to go to the military for information about the empty plan? No. I'm trying to persuade you to agree to my plan to tear up the peace treaty with the Zerg swarm and attack Japan. Yuan Licheng shrugged. The corner of Su Ran's mouth twitched. Indeed, Su Ran was almost persuaded when Yuan Licheng dragged it out. Of course, there is a prerequisite for this. If Su Ran did not get 400,000 resource points in Koryo during this trip, the Yunchang will not be completed soon, and it is impossible for Su Ran to take the initiative to tear up the treaty with the swarm. Don't think so. Wouldn't it be courting death to tear up the treaty without force? But now it's different. If the so-called ancestor under Dongyin Kyushu Island is really another lost dog, Su Ran doesn't mind taking a trip now to wipe it out in the cradle. After all, the lesson learned from the spore life is still there, and it is still a ticking time bomb around him. Su Ran doesn't want to have another one. No matter who you are, good intentions or good intentions, if you are not of my race, I will kill you. Su Ran felt that her thoughts were very thorough, but at the moment, Su Ran said directly, okay, leave this matter to me, and I will talk to the representative of Kyoto and Minister Jin. But your movement is too obvious. The spore life and even the swarm, they're staring at us. Yuan Licheng only smiled slightly, and said, Your Excellency, Commander, you still have to meet the Commissioner of the United States. Su Ran, I still want to see the Commissioner of the United States? Aren't they going to kill me? Su Ran is actually not worried about such things as rebellion and mutiny. First, at least now, he has firmly grasped the hearts of the main battle fleet in his own hands. Second, he is the leader of the system and the fleet. The person with the highest authority, as long as he gives an order, will immediately withdraw all authority, and others will not even be able to drive a drone, let alone do other things. But don't you have to pretend you don't know about this? Yuan Licheng stood up and said seriously, you forgot? This is a global attack plan launched by our fleet. He came here on invitation, but you refused him outside the door. Others will retreat because of it. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.